Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 105. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Monday edition of the Terrible Podcast, the start of the 2021 draft week. Apologize, this episode's coming out a little bit later today. Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin had their press conference this morning, so Dave and I wanted to wait until after that was done and covered so we could talk about what Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin had to say. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah. Hopefully better, a little better now maybe.
Going through the change there, it seems. No, but it's draft week. I mean, how can we not be doing great right now? I mean, finally got these mock drafts starting to wind up right now. I think your final one went up on SteelersDepot.com this morning. We'll obviously talk about that here in a little bit. I'm trying to use the Scotch tape and all to put mine together here, but a lot to get to obviously today with Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin holding their annual pre-draft press conference.
And let's start with a little bit of breaking news to some low degree. Marcus Gilbert, former Steelers offensive tackle, just announced his retirement 1 minute ago. Sent out a tweet announcing his retirement. And so Gilbert drafted in the second round out of Florida. What year was that, Dave? 2011, 2012?
Oh boy, it seems like just reading this news as it comes across as well too. When let's see, Marcus Gilbert was 2011, second round pick.
Yeah, really good player. He had undergone a big weight change and lost a lot of weight and just became a really good athletic tackle. Had some injury concerns later in his career and then got traded over to Arizona where he finished up his career. But good luck to Marcus Gilbert as he moves on with life's work.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing about him, if he didn't have those early career, what was it, like ankle injury or whatnot? I mean, he kind of battled a couple injuries right out of the chute there, and had he not done so, and it makes you kind of wonder how, what early on in his career would have looked like there. And boy, you want to talk about someone who went through a body transformation, man.
I still have the photos side by side. Big difference.
Big difference. Boy, some of the battles he'd have over the years with, who was it? Michael Johnson and Carlos Dunlap. I think were a couple of big battles that you look forward to with him annually. He obviously not going to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and might get kind of lost in the annals of time, the sands through the hourglass type thing. But I'm not soon going to forget Marcus Gilbert and the years that he obviously played with the Steelers. Unfortunately, once again, injuries. And I think later on in his career it was hamstring or soft tissue and all like that. It makes you, he's the kind of player that you kind of wonder, had injuries not gotten a hold of him, what kind of player he would have been,
Right. But still a really good player and part of some excellent Steelers offensive line. So wishing Marcus Gilbert well in retirement. All right, Dave, let's jump into the news of the day. Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin held their pre-draft press conference Monday morning at 11 a.m. It was also an in-person event for the media, first in-person event the team and media has held since the pandemic began. So there's kind of a little box to check there as well. Still socially distanced, mask, all that good stuff. But Colbert, Tomlin talking to the media about kind of their draft plans and just draft overall feelings. Dave, what kind of stuck out to you in terms of the most notable things Kevin Colbert and or Mike Tomlin had to say?
Oh, man, you had to open it up that way? The answer is yes. Look, I mean, they're not going to go in there and tell you what they're going to do during the draft. And a lot of the same stuff that we get every year is repetitious. It's become, we do our own mock drafts. We don't bother with any other mock drafts. We hardly pay any attention. Basically, he spoke directly to us today. He said, we don't pay attention to any of the Steelers Depot mock drafts. No, he didn't say that specifically, but, a lot of the same things that we hear year in, year out. But I think if you get into this and dissect it a little bit, there's a little bit to glean from it, and especially non-draft related stuff. Now, when it comes to the draft stuff specifically, I think he made it pretty clear that it will be surprising to see the Steelers trade up this year, and not only in the first round, but in any round. It really sounds like the Steelers want to come out of this draft with at least 8 draft picks, and I would imagine not many more than that. I think the final number probably will end up being around 7 or 8 potentially. But at this point right now, I mean, stranger things obviously have happened. I think it's safe to assume that they will not trade up in the first round at all, and I'm willing to venture a guess that if they do trade up in any round this year, it would be after the 4th round. In so many words, he said he doesn't visualize them trading up this year.
Yeah, it was probably the most honest and upfront thing that either Colbert or Tomlin had to say. Well, Tomlin was kind of honest about one thing we'll get to in a second, but with Colbert, he said, quote, again, we'll always get asked about trade up, trade down. I'm very doubtful that we'll trade up. We really value those 8 picks that we have, 5 of which are in the top 40, including 2 fourth-round picks that are coming in at 128 and 140. I do have a terrible take today that says, and I've generally been against the idea of trading up because there are so many needs for this team that they have to address, but because the draft class in general is so shallow. It's about a third of the draft eligible guys that are normally in it. The day 3, picks could be really hard to find that diamond in the rough. So I wouldn't be opposed to maybe packaging those 2 4s and trying to move up into the 3rd round, or even taking those 2 7s and doing something with that. Easier said than done, I know. But you're right. I don't really anticipate Colbert to do a lot when it comes to trades, especially trading up this draft season.
I just pushed the button.
Yeah, and that's simple, right?
to hear some people talk, it is. And then look, he was also asked about the possibility of trading down, you ask that like he's going to tell you,
Right. But he is more receptive to the idea of going down than going up, it seems like.
Yes, absolutely. And, ask kind of specifically about, because this year you have both Cleveland and Baltimore behind you. And really, in fact, as of the other day, you got Baltimore behind you. Let's see, where's the pick? You got them behind you twice in the first round now because of the trade sending
Orlando Brown.
Yeah, Orlando Brown to the Kansas City Chiefs in a mega deal that happened over the weekend there. But you got Baltimore behind you. You got Cleveland behind you. If you're going to trade down in the first round, and it's not to one of those 2 teams, you quickly run out of teams that you might be able to trade with to go down there. Now he says, look, if he had his druthers, he wouldn't trade with a division team, but it all boils down to, and look, it's common sense. If we know if there's 4 players or 5 players that we really like, that we are comfortable with drafting either one of those 5, we won't move down any more than 5 spots. It's got to be a win-win, obviously, for the Steelers. And once again, he says, look, not my favorite thing to do to trade within division, but that something like that wouldn't totally prevent us from doing that. Basically, what that means is, we'll answer the phone, and we'll see where things go from there. Once again, I think you wrote about this recently, kind of and based off a study, a report that was out there as well, too. Nobody moves less. Nobody moves less than Kevin Colbert, right? Whether it be up or down in a draft, and I think he has more the propensity to move down. I think over the years,
actually, it's go up.
I mean, move up than it is move down. I think. What was it? You go back to the Antonio Brown draft, I think, in, 2010, when they moved out of the 2nd round, right? And had a couple of 3rd-round picks. I think that was the Urbic and the was that the Urbic and the Sanders draft? And then obviously later on in the draft, you get Antonio Brown. They traded for Bryant McFadden in that draft, and as part of that, got a 6th-round pick from the Arizona Cardinals on top of it, and that gave birth to Antonio Brown there. So once again, if they go either way in this year's draft, and I think you'd probably agree with me, it's probably going to be after the third or fourth round in general, unless somebody just blows their doors off. And for us to sit here and try to predict drafts, I mean, not only year in, year out, but I mean, especially this year based on, kind of what we know so far, which obviously isn't a lot, then, I mean, you're kidding yourself, I think. You're wasting time. You're wasting more time doing that than you are spending it on your mock drafts.
Hey, my mock draft came out today. That Cardinals trade worked out pretty well, though, for both teams. The Steelers got AB and Brian McFadden, and the Cardinals got John Skelton. So, I mean, that's kind of a win-win. That PFF study was since 2011, basically Kevin Colbert's been the least trade-happy GM in football, only traded 4 times. All 4 were to go up. He's never traded down since 2011. Just not a lot of action there. My guess is they don't have any movement this year. You never know until you get on the clock and those things. As you mentioned, in the first round, you got Pittsburgh at 24, Cleveland at 26, Baltimore 27, and now at 31, picking up that Chiefs pick in the Orlando Brown Jr. deal, which will probably make it that much tougher to move down if you want to. Not impossible, as you and Colbert are saying, but probably makes it a little more challenging. But I agree. If they're going to do anything in round 1, it's probably go down and not go up.
Yeah, and, look, he was asked point blank if there's any kind of a philosophy of trading out of the first round. And, what's he going to say? If he says, no, we're not going to go down out of the first round, then that probably stops the phone calls from coming his way, But I think it would be amazing enough if they did. I understand where a lot of our listeners are coming from. And look, I mean, I don't think it would hurt my feelings to see them move down a spot or 2 or 3 if they thought they could get the same player and pick up maybe a second round or third round pick in the process there. I mean, I think we both agree if they're going to do anything in the first round, it's going to go down. But the idea, I mean, they would have to get their socks blown off, I think, to move out of the first round completely because, I mean, you'd be looking at back-to-back years at not having a first-round pick. I mean, how strange was it alone to not have one last year? I mean, for a good reason, though, obviously in Minkah Fitzpatrick. But it just, I mean, you want to talk about, earth-shattering news if they were to move out of the first round this year, I think.
Yeah, probably unlikely. And just to hear the way that Colbert talks about his philosophy of trading down is basically we're going to move down the number of spots that we're still comfortable in getting a player we really like. So if we're going to move down, as his example, 5 spots, there's 5 players that we really want to take so he never loses, what Colbert's saying. So if we're going to talk about moving down out of the first round, that's 8+ spots. Are there going to be 8 to 10 players that you really like that you're comfortable taking? That probably isn't going to happen. So when they do move down, it's only minor steps. 2001 moved down 3 spots from 16 to 19. Still took Casey Hampton. Obviously worked out very well for the Steelers. So I think trading down is possible, but trading down and out, just not only because it's out of the first round, but how far of a drop that is and how many players you would have to like to be comfortable with that, in Colbert's own words, probably makes it unlikely they're going to go out of the first round entirely.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to be surprised if either happens. If they trade down in the first round, and I'll be floored if they trade out. I mean, trade out of the first round, totally. And really, it goes the same with the second round as well too. I mean, if we understand the fact that they're not going up, the likelihood of them going down in the second, I think, is just as probable as it is going down in the first there. So,
but I think there is a case to be made for trading down, though, even if it is only a couple of spots.
Sure. Look, I mean, like I said, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody's feelings if we get to draft day and in the first round they go down 2 spots and pick up whatever. That's the most likely scenario is to go down, but within that. I mean, how far are you going to go down where you're going to be guaranteed, one of X amount of players that you like? And then, I think throwing the fact that Cleveland and Baltimore are in the mix there on top of it. I'm willing to bet before it even gets to that, I think Baltimore takes one of those first round draft picks of theirs and goes up above the Steelers to go get something, like a tackle or something like that.
They're going to take Tevin Jenkins. The Steelers are going to want Tevin Jenkins. They're going to take Tevin Jenkins to play my right tackle. The Ravens are.
Well, I mean, the Steelers didn't go to the Oklahoma State Pro Day, but that's a that's a whole nother argument, I guess, right there that we'll get into over these next several days or whatnot. But can we just cut this portion of the podcast out and put it into future years there, because it really sounds like we say the same thing every year. And once again, no, I'm not opposed to trading, but to sit here and for people to ask us questions and try to speculate, well, what do you think about moving here or moving there? I mean, we're spinning our wheels there. Yes, I think I would not be opposed to them trading down in any round this year. And especially not in the first round, and especially if they don't move out of the first round completely, if they to pick up some picks. So, I mean, I don't know how else to phrase that.
Yeah, it's just difficult to try to talk about and debate trades because this is so theoretical and it doesn't really apply to anything until you're almost at draft day and you're on the clock or you're close to being on the clock and there are offers coming in, you know what the board looks like, et cetera. And so, Kevin Colbert's rarely going to talk in absolutes because he's been a GM for 20 plus years and he's probably seen every sort of scenario play out. So you never really say never to anything. But again, just to put a bow on it, probably they're going to just stand pat as they usually do in probably all rounds of this draft.
All right. He's evidently open to drafting a quarterback. Once again, we don't feel like that's going to be anything that happens in the first round. I don't think you can sit here and bet your life that they won't draft a quarterback this year. I would put the chances at probably below 20% of it actually happening. Look, they have 4 quarterbacks on the roster right now. He's happy with all 4 of them, but at the same time, you can't ignore the most important position probably on a football team, and it's their responsibility to kind of keep that in mind when going through this. If you have a chance to upgrade any position on the bottom of your depth chart, even the quarterback position, you should probably do so to some degree. I'm not convinced that doing so outside of the first or second round with 4 quarterbacks on your roster, all with experience, is the right way to go about doing it. But once again, he wanted to make sure that he got the word out there that they are not completely ruling out drafting a quarterback this year.
Yeah, Dave, it's a really unique situation at quarterback because you have 4 talented quarterbacks on your team right now. So on that look alone, on paper, it feels like there is no need, no fit for a 5th guy. But none of those quarterbacks are under contract for next season. Now, Haskins is a restricted free agent. You have team control under him, but who knows what's going to happen a year from now. But Ben, Rudolph, and Dobbs are going to be free agents after the season. Ben, more likely than not to retire. So you're in a weird spot there with quarterbacks that I don't think the Steelers have probably ever been in before. So, again, I think it's less likely than not that they take a quarterback. Probably not going to happen, but I won't totally discount it either.
And once again, I think if it happens, it'll be right around probably one of those, in the 4th round there. I think you're looking at maybe a Kellen Mond, or I don't know, Jamie Newman kid would probably make some sense if you went that way. I obviously hope they don't do it at all. If you're not going to get a top tier one, in my opinion, in the first or second round, then why bother? That's kind of my view on it there. An argument can be made that maybe Mond has potential, but look, if this is a team that's wanting to win right now, and really, Colbert pretty much admitted, even if you do draft a quarterback this year, probably not going to play in 2021, barring something cataclysmic happen like we had happen in 2004, which, I mean, it happened once, but
it happened in 2019 too, I guess,
right,
theoretically.
Right, but within all that, I mean, if you're laying odds here, you're saying I bet you that the Steelers don't draft a quarterback at all this year.
Yeah, I think so. But I think a guy like Jamie Newman in the 4th round probably makes the most sense. He's a developmental guy. Didn't play this past season, transferred to Georgia, lost a job, and then just kind of opted out in a weird situation there. But he says he's spoken to the Steelers quite a bit in the pre-draft process, and he's the guy that basically you effectively redshirt because there's really no path to playtime this year with the 4 quarterbacks already on the roster. And maybe he's in the mix in 2022 to some sort of degree.
All right, and about Kevin and the opt-out players.
Yeah, Colbert had said, and this is consistent with what he said really for the last several months, all things being equal, if there are two players with very equal grades, they're going to take the player who played in 2020 as opposed to the one who did not play, whether that was opt-out or the school not playing or whatever the case is. And so I know that kind of ruffled some sort of feathers, but Colbert just being honest there with that, and it's hard to blame him. They want to take the guy that has the more recent tape, the guy they feel is more NFL ready and maybe won't have some of the lack of rust and conditioning issues that some of the guys who, for whatever reason, didn't play in 2020.
All right, and I mean that makes sense. I mean, if you have two, I don't think he's saying they won't draft. Look, do I expect them to come out of this draft with like 3 or 4 players that opted out last year? No, and I think you would agree, right?
Right. Now, yeah, Colbert said that they may still take players who opted out, but if all things were equal,
right,
the tiebreaker would go to the guy who did play. So he's not saying they won't take one, but you're right, they're not going to take 3 or 4 guys who did not play this past season, maybe 1 to 2.
I think at most 2. I would say one just feels more like in the wheelhouse of potentially taking one, but that number could very easily be 0 too. So they would really probably have to know the player if they took the player that opted out.
Right, like it'd have to be an upperclassman to start, probably a senior that has 3 years of tape already on him.
Right, and probably one that went to the Senior Bowl too, right?
Right, yeah, somebody that also worked out in front of him, probably the way to go. So we'll talk about that when we get to my mock draft a little bit later. Also talking about guys that he may or may not take, which is kind of how a lot of this went with running backs. Someone asked him if he would consider running back in the first round. So much commentary on running back's not worth the pick in the first round, they're devalued, et cetera, et cetera. But Colbert was open to the idea and certainly did not dismiss it, saying if you can get a dynamic player, regardless of position, running back included in that mix, you take him. Wherever you can take him, he says, quote, but if you have a dynamic player at any position, that player should make a difference, and running back is no different. Also pointed to a lot of Hall of Fame and elite backs have been drafted in high rounds over the course of NFL history.
Is there anything to parse there? Is there anything to let's see, where's my
tinfoil at? Yeah.
At there.
I know you have it right next to you.
Keep it in my like a COVID mask, right? Just keep it.
Just slide it up and got it on.
I need a tinfoil gator.
Yeah.
That could be hot in the summer, couldn't it?
Bake some grilling.
Bake my lips.
But yeah, I don't think there's a lot to parse here. He's open to it. Obviously, we already knew that going into it. I mean, he's an older school guy, so it's not like he's some sort of new age analytics, running backs don't matter kind of crowd. So they're open.
What are you trying to say there?
Well, I'm just saying, like, some people, like Warren Sharp, for example, who's 100% against in analytics and the new age kind of stuff. The Steelers are very old school, and Tomlin and Colbert are in that camp, so they don't really care about what the numbers say about the value of running back, good or bad.
Think he tried to sell it a little bit too hard, or no?
He's trying to what?
Sell it too hard that they might?
No,
or do you
not
think
really.
It was? Is there anything whatsoever, an the, a but, or whatnot to parse within anything that he said?
Not really.
About
he's open
running
to
back?
the idea. So obviously, if they took a running back at 24, it's going to shock absolutely nobody. But I think it just kind of confirms that.
All right. What about his thoughts on the overall depth positionally throughout the draft?
It was sort of interesting. He did include running back as one of those deep positions in this class. I don't have the full quote up here from what Colbert said, but he talked about the offensive tackle, really the whole offensive line group, centers, guards, tackles really deep, corners deep. He said linebacker both inside and outside are deep, and he just kind of said the only positions that were shallow was definitely defensive line and tight end, also a pretty shallow group. So maybe that would clue to taking a tight end early, like a Pat Freiermuth at 55. We'll see, but not a whole lot there for me to parse.
Yeah, really. Normally we come away in the pre-draft process. Obviously, there wasn't a combine. That's usually the time we get to. He does a little bit better job of kind of identifying position groups and all like that. But there is okay depth at the tight end, the quarterback, and the safety positions. And I can be very upfront and honest. There's very limited depth in this year's draft on the defensive line. Well, we kind of, thanks for that. We kind of knew that about defensive line, especially when it comes to defensive linemen that the Steelers look for. Remember me go way back saying, man, where are these where these kind of guys that 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 305 pounds, that the Steelers like to turn into those 5 techs, those 4-eye techs, something along those lines. That kind of player, and just in general, the defensive tackle. It's a good year not to have to be in the business of needing that group. And there's a very good chance this team comes out of this draft without one, right? And
a high chance.
Especially, boy, what a gift now going back to getting Wormley. I know a lot of people say, who cares if Wormley came back? Look, I think in the grand scheme of things, it is a good re-signing. I would have liked to have seen it a little bit cheaper than what it was. Look, we thought Tyson Alualu was out the door, and almost like the Grandpa Simpson there, put his hat on the rack in Jacksonville, and back he comes, and I think that's a huge boon for the Steelers. Basically where this roster sits right now, and you look at a couple of the other guys that they've added. The Abdullah Anderson's got him a little bit of experience as well too. On top of it, I think you could go into this draft and feel okay at all if you come out of it without a defensive lineman at all.
Sure, and I expect that to be the case. Now, I'm mad at Colbert because they almost let Alualu walk for $500K, and they just got lucky that he came back, knowing this draft class was going to be pretty poor if they wanted to replace him that way, but it all kind of worked out in the end.
Do you read anything whatsoever? And he said there's good depth, we believe, on the offensive line, the wide receivers, the running backs, the linebackers, both inside and outside, and the corners. And then, obviously, I think there's a little bit to read into his comments about the tight end depth. In this thing, and then later on during his press conference, he did talk about the center position and how. Do you have the exact quote? Don't want to get that wrong.
Yeah, I know Matthew just wrote about it. He did say it was unusually deep center class. Let me get the quote here. It says, quote, "The center position, it is unusually deep this year. Usually there aren't a lot of centers in a given draft, but we feel good. There's quality centers in this draft that we think are starter capable, and it's unusual for that position." I think he's right on the money with that comment.
I think he's selling it just a little bit. There are a couple of good centers in this draft class I could see being Steelers, but after that, I think you get into more looking at wondering how a Hainsey would look at center, which would on paper probably wouldn't be bad, but there is a conversion to deal with there. Sure. Just as there is with Quinn Miners there. I think he's being a little bit too generous when it comes to the center position.
Yeah, maybe it's more of a relative comparison to the past years than it is just a true looking at this class alone. But I think it is a good center class, and I think overall with his assessment is just him being honest. I don't think he's trying to really play games too much. I mean, the running back is deep, offensive line is extremely deep, corners a pretty deep class, and the tight end class is not very deep, and defense line is super shallow. So I think he's just being blunt and honest about his assessment of things.
Okay, what else do we have? Draft related from what he said
from Colbert. I think that was basically all the big things. Let me kind of scroll back through the list over here.
The medicals was interesting. I think, and really it's only interesting from the aspect of if you're going to look. There's no secret. The last couple of weeks, Landon Dickerson's been back in the news cycle quite heavily, especially when it comes to the Steelers and a potential of making him the pick. Hey, what'd you think about Dr. Mel's terrible take on Landon Dickerson?
I loved it. I loved the insight there, the ability to pull different players' histories and, just working with as much information as we can without obviously having access to Dickerson's actual medical history. I thought it was just really good insight from her.
The problem is we don't have even if we had it, we probably wouldn't know what it looked like upside down or right side up. Dr. Mel would. We could turn it over to her, but we just don't know.
Right. And I think the other concern is that with a guy like Marshall Yanda, who she pointed out that he had a torn ACL and came back. I mean, that's one singular injury. With Dickerson, if he just had one torn ACL, I think people wouldn't really care that much. Wouldn't be too many red flags. But it's just the repeated history of it. I think is probably the bigger concern for Dickerson, not just one singular injury.
Didn't T.J. Watt have a couple issues?
Yeah, he did. And Marquise Pouncey, as Dr. Mel pointed out, had a ton of injuries. I forgot that he had torn his ACL as well, as she said. So, I mean, he had a ton of stuff. So I think that is probably better precedent in comparison than maybe just a singular injury like a Marshall Yanda.
But didn't T.J. Watt, before he turned pro, have, before he came out, 2 of them, I thought? At least one, I know.
I don't remember exactly the nature of the injury, but he did have health concerns coming out for sure.
Wasn't that what, it's been a while, and we tend to further we get away from these things, the more we tend to lose. Look, we'll always remember why Heath Miller, slipped or didn't work out because of a sports hernia and all like that. But with some of these guys, it seems like some of the issue with T.J. Watt was, kind of wonder about that knee of his.
Yeah, I'm just trying to Google some stuff right now. I don't want to get all the information because I might get some of this stuff wrong. But yeah, he had knee issues coming out, I think is a fair way to paint that.
Now, obviously, he didn't his last season. He wasn't entering the draft coming off of a knee injury such in a way that Dickerson is. Well, anyway, I thought Colbert did a very good job of outlining, the issues that come along with the COVID and the pre-draft medical evaluations there. But rest assured, the Steelers have been busy as part of this process. Now, obviously, we don't know who, what, when, where, why, and how. But he did talk about they were able to bring, and they being the NFL, able to bring 100 to Indianapolis based on our ratings, based upon how we all voted for those players as 32 teams. So in other words, I'm guessing 32 teams have a checklist they can fill out says, these are the top 50 guys or whatever, and I'm sure the consensus rules and anyway, they brought 100 players to Indianapolis based upon how they all voted. And then we went beyond that even further and we brought in 42 additional players to the combine that we felt were the next group that had some medical issues that needed to be looked at. So Colbert goes on to say roughly 142, he thinks they might have gotten to 150 where our doctors and, again, a smaller group of doctors were able to actually give them physicals. So there's a lot of trust in there. Now I don't know for sure if Norwig is one of the doctors that is allowed to be in there poking and prodding, what if he was, when you consider that, Steelers still part of Blesto, right?
Yep, they are.
I wonder, these are going to be NFL, you would think these are going to be NFL team doctors to some degree in there, right? As part of that, I wonder, somebody should have asked a better question, Colbert, that question to say, was Norwig part of that group in Indianapolis looking at these players? That would be good information to have. Am I correct?
Yeah, because I don't know the answer to that. I think in traditional combine years, you have your team doctors with you, and when you go in the medical, these players just kind of get just passed around by these doctors pretty much. And so I don't know if it's Norwig, I don't know if it's Dr. Maroon, I'm not sure, whoever for the Steelers, or if it was just NFL team doctors with their own medical staff, so it was kind of more equitable for no team to have the bias of having their own doctors let people look at guys and other teams not.
There's not going to be there's not going to be a way, because probably some doctors got a cousin, uncle, aunt's, hairdresser's, sister's, brother's, niece that has a link to another NFL team. So to think that there's going to be a non-biased or non-preferential part of having ex-doctor as one of however many doctors down there, I don't think you can go that route.
Well, I'm saying, could it be just a group of 10 NFL team doctors that now distribute reports and information out to the whole league the way that Blesto would on scattering reports or plays? I don't know how they're doing it is obviously the point I'm trying to get at. I'm just trying to think of, did they have it in that more appearance of a fair way or not? Again, that would have been a great question to ask Colbert as a follow-up.
I would ask them specifically, was a Steelers team doctor, or team, on staff, specifically one of X amount that was in Indianapolis poking and prodding on these kids?
All right. Yeah, it's a good question. We unfortunately will not get a direct answer to that. And for whatever it's worth, they drafted Kevin Dawson last year, who did not go to the combine. They probably didn't have as good a medical evaluation on him as they did the other players they drafted, but didn't prevent them from taking Dawson. Now, I don't think he had any injury concerns necessarily, but you still want to get a good medical background on those guys for any underlying or long-term issues.
Do you think the Steelers got the information? There was a report not long after Kevin Colbert talked from Adam Schefter saying some teams still not happy with the information that they got, yada, yada, going to be making decisions all the way up to the draft as pieces of information come in, however that was worded. Do you think the Steelers are comfortable with what they have and haven't gotten as far as medicals go on certain players?
I mean, I'm sure they're not as comfortable as they would love to be in a normal year, but they're probably as comfortable as they're going to get. So if I had to guess, they probably are. I think it's more of a case by case in terms of are they comfortable with X player's medical, and that who knows what we know about any individual player.
Right. I'm willing to think there's probably only about probably 5 to 7 of them that they really, really are concerned about.
Right, and I'm guessing they're comfortable with the guys they were concerned about because they knew they had to do their homework on at Dickerson or whoever, Davis Mills, just throwing a name out there, a guy that had injury concerns that they want to get a good feel for.
Yeah, maybe some of these guys that in there, 1 or 2 of them with concussion issues or whatnot.
I'm sure. And some guys couldn't go to Indy initially because they got COVID and they had to wait and then probably delay that information. So that could be a source of frustration from teams, is just getting guys available to get that information made accessible.
All right, I'm looking for something to parse here and I can't find it out of that. So I guess we move on to the next part of what, anything else Kevin Colbert said draft related worth covering?
No, not really. I think that was – he never is going to give the game away, obviously, but he's, I think, generally upfront with some surface-level information about his feelings toward the draft. So I don't think he's trying to play poker too much, but he's not obviously showing his cards either.
All right. Basically all positions are on the board, right?
Yeah, he didn't do the traditional ruling out positions that he did, 5 years ago.
Right. So we really didn't learn anything new, but it sure was fun to talk about.
It was. Mike Tomlin, a little more honest, though, and he did probably his most honest answer was because he was asked who is your left tackle and who is your right cornerback. Now, he did qualify it about 43 times, saying, it's a depth chart in April. Don't read much into it, but he did say Chukwuma Okorafor penciled in as your left tackle today and Cam Sutton your right cornerback. I think that's not a surprise, especially with Sutton, but good to hear some sort of to gauge where Tomlin's head is at with Okorafor being left tackle, which presumably makes Zach Banner your right tackle.
And hasn't that pretty much what the has been coming out of the Steelers Depot Metroplex in both the Pittsburgh and Las Vegas locations?
Yeah, I believe so. So again, not
as opposed to what's coming out of maybe other locations, media outlets. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, again, I don't think that's earth-shattering information necessarily, but it's just good to get a gauge and understanding of where this team is at today. Again, all things are subject to change.
Right. Look, they could still and the thing that could change obviously is they draft a tackle, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to tackle. Now, when it comes to the cornerback position, Cameron Sutton's obviously going to be on the field. It's just how much is he going to be outside and how much is he going to be inside. Kevin Colbert did say during his Steelers United fan call after his press conference that going to play inside, outside. He didn't say how much, obviously, but I think there's a little bit left up in the air when it comes to that overall. But you and I don't think, and loyal listeners of the Terrible Podcast, I don't think are learning anything new about those statements about Okorafor and Sutton. However, if you're new to the podcast and getting your stuff elsewhere, maybe that is a little bit new.
Yeah, and I should mention, and Colbert said this, but it wasn't draft-related, so I wanted to hold it until we kind of got into the current state of the roster, is that Colbert did confirm Steven Nelson was released for salary cap reasons. I can pull up the quote here in a moment.
Oh, hold on. I'm holding my pearls here. Okay.
Let me get the smelling salts there there to wake you up.
My shocked face here.
But let me get the exact quote here. And again, it was a lot of debate because it was a really chaotic, crazy situation. There were a lot of layers to this thing. It was just out of the blue, all that stuff. But he said, quote, "What we talked about in Steven Nelson's case, Steve was a valuable player for us. However, we had to make some tough salary cap decisions. I mentioned earlier, we just couldn't keep him under the current setup we're dealing with from a salary cap standpoint. We had to make some tough choices." So as Nelson said, and as Colbert confirms, released because of cap reasons.
Which is nothing new coming out of our mouths. We told people that was probably the case right from the get-go. All right.
All right, and then Mike Tomlin, just kind of extension of that conversation, talking about the battle between James Pierre and Justin Lane and their guys' growth and development. That was a very standard Tomlin speak there, talking about how both guys hopefully will just continue to grow. And what happened last year was all well and good, but this year a clean slate, and just looking forward to see how much those guys get better heading into the summer.
But Colbert, was it Colbert or Tomlin? One of the two basically did quantify, though, that Lane was essentially ahead.
Really?
I mean, that Pierre was essentially ahead.
Well, yeah, by season's end. I mean, that was obvious. They played Pierre in the playoff game. I mean, how could you deny that?
Well, there are people that are trying to deny that, but anyway.
Well, I don't know how you could. But yeah, I mean, and Tomlin did say it wasn't like in the playoffs we all of a sudden decided to change and have. I don't know. It was a weird question to start with, but yeah, Pierre jumped Lane by the end of the last season, but Tomlin was basically saying like it's a clean slate. Those guys will still battle, and nothing is set in stone, which is obvious.
Right.
So. That was it. Anything else from Tomlin? Tomlin didn't talk a whole lot in this presser, actually. It was kind of Colbert dominated, which is fine. I don't get to hear from
Colbert. I mean, not like we're going to learn anything earth-shattering anyway, but I'm trying to think what else. They talk about the draft. Oh, Vince Williams being back. I mean, and I think this kind of plays back into kind of the what I thought went down with Vince Williams too. I think it was like face off there saying, look, either you're going to have to take a cut down to the minimum or we're going to have to cut you. And he said, cut me, Mick. That's a line from Rocky. You're probably not old enough to remember that, but cut me, Kevin. And he said, okay, I will. And out on the street he went. Out on the street for a living. All right, that's before your time there. But anyway,
which Rocky are the Steelers right now? The one where he wins or the one where he loses?
Yeah. We're at the stage right now. I think in Rocky 4. I think we're about in Rocky 4 about this point. But anyway, okay. Vince Williams gets cut. Goes out to the street, finds out that he can't get anything more than the minimum, really, and says, you know what, there's a contract hanging on the door, I better go fill one of those out. And that's exactly how it sounds like. Look, I mean, they praised him. Mike Tomlin says Vince Williams is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Vince Williams bleeds black and gold. Everything. You're not going to get an argument out of us when it comes to any of that. I just think that Vince probably could have avoided all this by just saying, just go ahead and take it down to the minimum,
Yeah, probably.
And that's what it sounds like there. I think he's in so many words asked about Alex Highsmith and the depth chart and the outside linebacker position. He says, or in so many words, why, Bud Dupree was allowed to let walk. And he said, Alex Highsmith from year 1 to year 2, talking about that jump, knowing the standard of expectations that we have for our young players, and, really expects Alex Highsmith to make that next jump.
And hopefully he does. There might not be any current Steeler under the spotlight more than Alex Highsmith. He played well last year, replacing Dupree, but he'll have to take his game to a new level. Hopefully become a better pass rusher, because there's still are some work, in terms of getting more pressure and sacks and things like that. But a big shoes to fill for Alex Highsmith. I think Mike Tomlin made that abundantly clear.
Right.
All right, Dave. Let's see. Anything else from Tomlin? I think that probably covers it pretty well. Anything from this Colbert SNU thing? I think there wasn't a whole lot there.
No, I don't think there's anything hugely. If there is, we'll definitely write about it as the day goes on here. And the 100 Zoom calls they said would. Kevin Colbert went out of his way to talk about how they went. How this process was a little bit harder this year than it even was last year. And I think that's obviously because they didn't have any semblance really of a combine to go to this year, and instead you're having to pick and choose and go to your pro days. They obviously went to 9 in total, so it sounds like we did not miss one, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. We had them down for 9.
That might have flown under the radar there, but at least we know for sure that It's not.
My ears perked up when he said it. I went, okay, good. We got them all.
Yeah. Match game, So, like I said, if that number had been 10, we would have been.
I would not be on this podcast right now. I'd be going through every single school.
Yeah. So at least we got what we knew happened there, and I don't think once again, we'll continue to parse. These quotes. I mean, it's what we do, or it's what I do as part of this. But I like this part about the inside linebacker position and evaluating that. I think that was a little bit gleaned a little bit something from that there. But overall, it's not like they're going to come out and tell you who they're going to draft. And it's funny how people, I see certain people on Twitter claiming that Colbert busted this narrative, busted that narrative, or what have you. I'm not seeing it. I mean, it's just pretty much very much a Seinfeld type 45-minute fill.
Much ado about nothing. Got you there. And just to recap, the 9 pro days Tomlin and Colbert were at, they were Clemson, Georgia, Auburn, Florida State, Alabama, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. And Tomlin and Colbert actually said, they're going to the places that have the largest kind of just pool of prospects to kind of maximize their time, which makes sense. And they always go to those Power 5 teams. So no surprises there.
If there was someone else that they liked, that they thought they on one of them open days, they would have been there. I don't care if there's one player there or 2 players there or what have you. If there's somebody that they thought qualified maybe as a first round pick, they would have been at that pro day. I guarantee you. And period.
Yeah, and they did it several years back with Jesse Bates at Wake Forest. If they wanted to go to Tulsa, they could have. There was no other conflicting schedule that day in terms of pro days happening that would have prevented them from doing so. So
Oklahoma State too, right?
Yeah. So, I don't know if there were other pro days that day.
Was there a conflicting date there?
I can check. Let's see. They were – where were they that day? They were at Notre Dame, I believe, that day. Wait. No, that was the next day. No, that was no – they were not anywhere on April 1st.
And the same with North Carolina, right?
Let me check that one as well, so I'm not saying the wrong thing.
No, they went somewhere. We wondered if they were going to go to North Carolina or somewhere else, I think.
Right, but we did not spot them anywhere on the 29th that day.
Okay.
We don't know where they were. They were at Ohio State the next day.
Okay.
Whatever that's worth. But only Eddie Faulkner was at North Carolina's pro day.
That we know of.
Yeah, and obviously we didn't get – we're going to miss stuff and all that, but from the list we have, we know Eddie Faulkner.
Wait, what? You missed stuff?
I was mad. I only have – they said Calvin Fisher was at 14 pro days. I think I'm down for like 7 or 8. So that alone, I mean, it's just hard to get all these guys, but you're not going to find a more comprehensive list than this.
Right. I don't think you miss them. They're not there to be seen,
Right. Yeah. I mean, they just don't show up in the photos or, whatever the case is. But anyway. You guys know the history there for pro days and Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert, and so the odds are good, but not guaranteed that their first round pick will come from one of those 9 schools I just mentioned.
All right. I mean, where are you on this? First round draft picks coming out of one of them 9 schools, right? You'd be shocked if it didn't. Well,
I may be a little less shocked this year than other years, but I mean, the history says that that's where it's going to go. So, I mean, there's been some rumors and speculation about a guy like Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State and Zaven Collins from Tulsa, but I think history is still pretty strong. And so I could not, in good faith for me, mock a player in my last mock draft that was not at one of those 9 pro days.
All right. Is it time to segue that way? Is that next?
Yeah, I was trying to segue that nicely into my final Pittsburgh Steelers mock draft that went up on the site on Monday, and starting things off at number 24. No surprise here. I tried to think about going in a different direction, but ultimately landed on the most popular name linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that is Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama.
Look, I definitely see why you went the way that you went that way, and personally, I think it's going to be one of 3 players, and I think Najee is one of those potential 3 players.
Who's the other 2?
I'm not telling you.
Oh, okay, yeah, because your mock has not come out yet. So, all right. Keep it a secret.
I don't think it's hard to decipher who those other 2 are. Within that, I keep going back. I am a man of full of tinfoil. I'm a tinfoil hoarder. It just seems so clean, doesn't it? I mean, it just.
But Devin Bush was the same way. We knew they loved Devin Bush.
We knew that we loved them, but we didn't know they were going to move up all that.
I know. But we knew they liked the player. That was the principle.
Right.
They loved the player. That was obvious.
Right. But because of where we assumed that he might go, talk about Devin Bush, at least with Najee, there's a lot. It's a lot more plausible to think that he'll be on the board when the Steelers picked, as opposed to the plausibility back a couple years ago with Devin Bush still being on the board. All right.
Is that a bad thing, though? I think it's a good thing.
Huh?
I think it's a good thing, though, that it's more likely Harris is going to be there. It makes I think the mock a little bit easier.
It feels too clean from. I mean, this feels like a wire-to-wire win at the Kentucky Derby or something like that,
Well, maybe he's Secretariat. I don't know.
Maybe he better be. I'll tell you what. If they drafted
he's got the shelf life of a racehorse too. So
he better be. My own conspiracies is the only thing that question whether or not. Look, I think he's one of the three. All right. My own conspiracies make me wonder if this is just too clean. You know what I'm saying? All the arrows just point perfectly because they do. And I tweeted out not a couple of weeks ago, man, they couldn't have any more fingerprints on Najee Harris if they tried right now. I mean, if you're a forensics investigator, you're thinking, they left us plenty of evidence here. That's the only thing when it comes to him is questioning, is it too obvious?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like getting to the crime scene and there's like a photo of the guy that says, "I'm the murderer.
I did it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a glove in there? No, I'm not gonna make an OJ joke. Anyway, yeah, no, I get that, right, for sure. But I mean, there is also the counter of, is there paralysis of the analysis when you start overthinking it too much because it makes too much sense. And again, Harris may not be there. This may be moot. He could go at 18 to the Dolphins. That would not surprise me in the least. But if he's there, from everything that we know and every kind of box that he checks, I mean, aside from age, it feels like he's the guy.
Yeah, I wish I still drank about this point. Every year, this time of the offseason, I really wish I still drank because it might help with me kind of with the paralysis by analysis. I absolutely love to overthink things like this. Mm-hmm. So that would be my only qualms whatsoever with Najee Harris is the fact that it feels too clean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had that same thought too, where this was like, because this was like Andrew Billings, where I got so hyper focused on, it's got to be Billings, it has to be Billings. Joe Green took him out to dinner, it has to be him, and it wasn't. And you always kind of have those scars a little bit of, am I putting blinders on the one guy? And I think that's a fair point you're making.
And I know you listed the other guys that you consider there, but who was realistically, I don't know if you would call it 1A or 1B or whatever. Who were you trying to decide between?
Well, I think Harris was pretty much the clear number one, so I don't think there was
You never doubted it? That was going to be your guy? How long has he been your guy?
I don't know when that light switch flipped to Harris, but probably a couple weeks now. I kind of knew that. I've been planning out these mocks and thinking that, okay, I'm going to probably put Harris in my final one.
Okay.
In terms of who was next man up, I think probably one of the two Alabama guys, either Dickerson or Alex Leatherwood. I think it's kind of, I shouldn't forget about his name either, because I mean he checks a lot of those boxes too, and potential left tackle and a really good run blocker. And I don't know how old he is, but I think he's younger than Najee Harris. So I think it's a guy that we should at least be mentioning a little bit more than we have.
Okay, I mean, look, Najee was in my last one as well too. I mean, and there are a lot of them out there with Najee in it, and you're not going to be able to fault anybody for putting Najee in there for sure.
Round two, though, you may fault me for this one, and I wrestled with the second round in general, and then also where to put this guy. That was Quinn Miners, the center out of Wisconsin Whitewater. I know this breaks a good deal of precedent, and I certainly could see him fall into the third round for the reasons that I know you've talked about and I wrote about in the post. But ultimately, end of the day, I feel like there's going to be a run on centers in that second round, kind of right before the Steelers pick, with guys like Humphrey, potentially Dickerson, maybe Myers coming off the board. And so I think the Steelers don't want to wait to get their guy and go ahead and take Quinn Miners.
Yeah, look, I mean, you know how I feel about him. I mean, I love the kid.
Right.
You know, from obviously, you know, it's not like Wisconsin whitewater tape runs runs all over the place here. My biggest concerns about him overall is there's a projection involved. There's the whole opt-out thing from last year. A tad bit undersized, right? Just a wee bit.
Play center. I wouldn't say he's undersized to play center.
The whole competition, small school. I mean, there's about a good 6 reasons you could come up with why he wouldn't be the pick, especially in the second round. I think. I love him. I wouldn't mind. If he ends up being the center at any, you know, that they draft at any point during this thing. I mean, you're not going to find me having fault with it. I just wonder if he will be the guy for all the reasons that I mentioned, and in the second round at that.
Yeah, that's all fair. I entirely understood. I would say 2 things that kind of help overcome some of those concerns. A, the small school aspect, which again, they haven't drafted a non-power 5 guy, let alone a D3 guy in the first or second round since 2004 with Ben and Coakley. But when you go to the Senior Bowl and you hadn't played football at all in 2020 because your school didn't play, he didn't opt out, the school didn't play football, and you go out there and dominate Power 5 guys who have played football all year, were in shape, were gone through their fall schedule, that's really impressive. And it kind of compare that in a sense to a guy like Javon Hargrave, who showed up at the Senior Bowl as a midweek ad for an injury replacement and just had a great week of practice, a good game. And I think seeing that against other Power 5 guys gives his team a lot more comfort in their evaluation, saying, okay, we know this guy has played well against other top round picks and Power 5 guys, SEC guys, etc. And then with the position switch, you're right, because you played guard exclusively in college, but at least you should have 4 preseason games this year that he can get a lot of work in stadium before the start of the regular season. So I think that at least is going to help ease the transition. We'll have some snaps and some reps before the regular season starts. So hopefully he's day one ready.
And then look, I think, you get a lot of those, except for the small school aspect and Hainsey is another guy I think at the Senior Bowl, you probably saw enough there that makes you, and look, we know Hainsey's not going to be a tackle at the NFL level,
Right.
So there's going to be some level of projection regardless of when it comes to a team that drafts him. Are you going to play him at guard? Are you going to play him at center? I think center is probably his best position. I think he can play guard for you in a pinch when it comes to him there. But I just wonder if because of all, once again, I think it'd be fantastic. You go back to that Senior Bowl practice tape that we got a hold of and all. I mean, he just was. Making pancakes right and left on some of these guys. He proved that he could play against that competition. I think the only question is position. All the things I said, the position switch,
sure.
the opt out, and small school, yada yada yada. Is that just going to be too much for the Steelers to overcome? We both agree he's probably not going to go in the first round, and we probably agreed that. I think at any time in the second round, a team likes him enough they could take him, and if the Steelers are going to take him, they'd probably have to take him at 55.
Right, that's the thing. I mean, he could make it 87. It wouldn't floor me if he did for the reasons you mentioned, but I don't think those odds are terribly likely. I think he's a squarely middle, day 2 kind of guy, and that's why you're going to take him here at 55, because if you don't, and Humphrey's off the board, and Dickerson's off the board, and Myers is off the board, then what do you do at center at 87 if those guys aren't there?
Where is he center 2 for you? Is he center 3 or 4 or what is he?
I would probably put him at center 3 behind Humphrey and Dickerson. Again, my always caveat medicals with Dickerson, but let's assume that's decent enough. And then Miners probably as a third by center. And yes, you're right. It's gonna take some work for him to make the move, but this guy's gonna work. This guy's gonna work extremely hard. So I think it's not like he's a lazy. There's effort concerns or something with him. He's gonna work his tail off to play center.
Yeah, and look, Clem was out there, right? I mean, so there's that level of interest in him. The Watts know this no minors as well.
And they need this type of guy. Even if it's not minors, they need someone physical and nasty like this guy. Adrian Clem has straight up said twice now, this line was not physical enough last year. We needed to get more physical. We need to get more nasty. You're never going to have to question his physicality with Quinn Miners.
Look, if they came out of this draft with and went Najee Harris and Quinn Miners, I think there are a lot of people be jumping up and down. And that probably includes Art Rooney II as well too.
Yeah, fulfills that mandate for sure. And so again, this may be a bit of a bumpy road in the transition, but hopefully this guy can be your center for 10 years. So there's a long-term aspect to look at it as well. But I almost went Jalen Mayfield. I almost went Pat Freiermuth. This was the toughest round for me to choose here because I think Freiermuth at 55 also kind of feels like a perfect fit for the Steelers.
Right. They like him.
Yeah. Round 3 going defense here with the first pick with Ardarius Washington, the corner safety at a TCU, a guy we have not talked about a whole lot in this pre-draft process, and I didn't love his tape, but I could see the Steelers liking him as a Mike Hilton replacement and also potential to play free safety. Has a similar build and style to Mike Hilton. Did not run well, but tested overall decent with his explosive numbers and agility numbers and things like that, and had 5 interceptions in 2019. Terrell Austin at his TCU Pro Day. So this one, I think, a sleeper pick under the radar, but makes a lot of sense for Pittsburgh.
The only thing I would say that based on the Blues Clues aspect of it and all, I don't believe Ardarius was either a Senior Bowl kid or an East-West Shrine Game invite. Was he?
I don't believe so. Was he an underclassman though? Or was he a senior?
Oh, that right. He was an underclassman. So
he was a redshirt sophomore, so obviously he's not going to be able to go to those games. So yeah, there's that. But I mean, then I think his overall athletic profile is kind of meh. Yeah, I mean the 40 was bad. The broad and stuff were good, but when you're playing in the slot, I think it matters a little bit less. Hilton and Sutton weren't exactly the peak of athleticism coming out. I think it just reminds him a lot of Mike Hilton, and that's probably and again a free safety can play there too. Because the thing is, if Cam Sutton's going to be stuck at right corner, and you want Minka to come down and play robber on third down, someone's got to rotate to the deep middle, and you don't. Sutton did that quite a bit last year. If he's kind of stuck in his corner spot, you need someone who can do that. So Washington, I think, is more than capable of playing some of that post safety.
He wasn't a captain or anything like that, right? I mean, because sophomore year, I doubt he was, because 2020 was his redshirt sophomore year. I don't think he was a captain or anything like that.
Don't believe so. No, looks like his teammate Moore was the captain.
Okay,
Moore's probably going to be a first round pick.
That was more of a try to fill. You tried to fill a need there more than anything, right?
I tried to fill 2 needs with safety and corner because you only got 8 picks and trying to find versatile guys that might be able to fill, different needs and wear multiple hats. I think he's the guy that can do that.
How bad did he miss both?
Really bad, really bad.
What they look for list.
He was one of the worst defenders, so I definitely went against the grain on that. But I take everything with as a puzzle piece. But he missed in like a lot of categories.
All right, what was the main reason for? I mean, what was the main thing that made you say, I think this is the best fit right here?
Well, a couple things. The biggest being, when they lost Antonio Brown, they replaced him with Deontay Johnson, who kind of felt like, on paper could be the next Antonio Brown, or at least have a similar skill set in terms of the ex-receiver skill set. And if you talk about replacing Mike Hilton in the slot, who has the most similar skill set to Mike Hilton, I think it's Ardarius Washington.
Okay.
And then Terrell Austin being at his pro day, I thought was pretty important as well.
Okay. Fair
Round
enough.
4, day 3, going edge here. I've talked about the need to add edge depth so much with Janarius Robinson out of Florida State. I don't think Robinson's ever going to be a starter or a super high upside kind of guy, but when you have Highsmith and Watt there, he probably will never have to be that. And just a big, long, good against the run, Power 5 guy. Carl Dunbar at his pro day, and edge depth I think is very critical to add to this team sooner than later.
Yeah, you kind of tipped this. You kind of leaning towards this the last couple of last 2 weeks, I think, right around in there. And look, it makes sense. Can he help you any on special teams?
Well, he's not the most athletic guy in terms of change of direction. There's some stiffness in his game. And there's been some concerns about motor. I didn't see that. I think our scouting report on him didn't really show the motor concerns either. But he'll have to. And I think he's got the size and the physicality to do that, although he is a pretty big guy. But, he could be like Chickalo. Chickalo was a big guy that excelled there. So maybe Robinson could do the same.
All right. Who were other options there?
In terms of edge or just in that 4th round spot?
Yeah, just edge.
Peyton Turner, and I think Turner's going to be probably a round or 2 higher than that, but I was really debating between Peyton Turner out of Houston, who I like more than Robinson, but he's probably going to be a second or third round pick. But it came down to Turner or Robinson for me.
Okay.
All right. Round 4, 140, guy that I think has both been in our mock drafts prior to this one, Dave. Tommy Doyle from Miami, Ohio. Big 6'8", 320-pound guy. Developmental guy. Definitely needs a season. Came to Miami as a defensive prospect. Played, I think, linebacker or defensive line in high school, and then got switched to tackle. Came in at 270 pounds. So a pretty lanky, lean guy, but played some of his best football in 2020. And a mauler in the run game. A good athlete. Has versatility. He's played both right tackle and left tackle. Going to need a year to sit for sure, but I think 2022 he could kind of work his way into that starting conversation. Got
to get a Mac guy in there, right?
Mm-hmm. Mac guy and a hockey-playing defenseman from Minnesota. I mean, that's a Steelers pick right there.
Yeah, he was obviously in my first mock. You could see if they get to a certain point in this draft, and if there's quite a run on tackles, you could really see this being as a fit. I'm with you on that one. And obviously I mocked him and Najee in my first mock draft there. I could see it getting to the point where you wait because of Kevin Colbert saying about the tackle depth in this class. And, there's really no huge dots to draw other than just being a fit there. But, I can see why you went that way.
And they were at his pro day. I don't know who was there, but they were there. Okay. So that helps as well. Round 6, that long wait from 140 to 216, going with Luke Farrell, the tight end from Ohio State, who was in my last mock draft as well. The only tight end who checked every box and what they look for. Study, Power 5 guy, very underutilized as a receiver, just 9 receptions over his last 2 years, but a good inline blocker, and hopefully has a easier transition coming from Ohio State than a lot of other rookie tight ends would have.
You got your Big Ten pick in there.
Yeah, you mentioned that. What is it? All but one draft.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, kind of crazy.
All but what did I say? 2003 was it? It was the draft when they only had 5 picks.
They traded up for Troy, right?
Right. So that's quite, and I took the time to research that out across the league too.
That's a lot of time you had to do that. Oh.
I know.
When do you do that? Do you do that at like 3:00 in the morning?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I just can't.
For this one, when did you research the Big Ten draft picks?
I think it was sometime during the afternoon. I just went through because you could do that on the Pro Football Reference Stats. What's the sister site now?
Stathead.
Yeah, Stathead. We all have subscriptions to and all, and just went team by team. Filtering out the dates from 2000 to now. This was 2000. I searched 2000 to 2020, obviously, because that's Colbert's time. With the Steelers, but really no other team even comes close to having the streak that the Steelers have dating back to, obviously 2003 was the last time that they didn't, and really only once since 2000 have they not drafted at least one Big Ten product there. So if you're putting together a mock draft, odds are very, very, very good that at least one Big Ten player needs to be in there. Now, they had the last time they drafted an Ohio State player was the actual last Big Ten or last Ohio State player that they drafted was Doran Grant several years ago.
Right, and that did not work out. Kevin Colbert's first ever draft pick was a Big Ten guy, Plexico Burress, right. Yeah. So, you got your Big Ten quota in there. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Round 7 with the first of their 2 7th-round picks, 245. Punter alert, Dave. I'm joining you on the punter bandwagon. I don't know if
I got to you, didn't I? I wore you down, didn't I?
Yeah, war of attrition there. I don't know if you're going to go with this guy though, but I went Presley Harvin III, the punter to Georgia Tech. 263 pounds. He played a 283 this past season. Ray Guy award winner for the best punter in college football in 2020. Quick operation, a big leg, shows some really elite punts. Has to be a more consistent guy. Also has experience as a holder, which is important. But the punter to compete with Jordan Berry.
And can be short yardage.
And can throw.
And can throw. I remember, I admit it, I went and looked at his tape after
nice.
After Danny Smith was spotted at that, and that was early on in the process, wasn't it? When the Georgia Tech Pro Day one of the first ones?
It was about midway through the cycle, I believe.
Anyway, I did it. I went and looked at because I've been calling for a punter since I think the end of last year for the Steelers to draft one there. It would just be intriguing because of the measurables of this kid.
Right. Remember, Sepulveda was a big punter.
Yeah, not like this kid though, was he?
Not like this, no. Sepulveda was a linebacker, but Harvin said a lot of coaches think he's an actual linebacker, and he has to tell them that no, he's a punter.
Yeah, once again, this guy, I think you could use this guy in some short yardage situations here. I get it. I'm going to have a punter in my final one because how can I not, right? Mm-hmm. Looking back at your punter evaluations, though, you actually did profiles on like 3 or 4 of them there. I think you came up with the Ohio State one. What are the areas where this Harvin kid does not match up with the other ones?
The knock on Harvin is the weight a little bit because it's just weird, but the consistency. There were a lot of shanks with him, and I want to see him just be more
fat shaming punters now? Is that what you're doing?
I'm just saying 5'11", 263, usually not associated with your punters. But
you're fat shaming punters. Okay.
I'm going to get canceled now. I think consistency for him. So I like Drew Chrisman more than I like Harvin. Harvin's my number 2 punter, but with Danny Smith's at his pro day, and Harvin apparently had a really good workout there in bad weather. And so that probably, I think, means a lot to the Steelers because you're going to punt in Pittsburgh in November, December, be able to punt in bad weather. And so I think him being at Georgia Tech and then having a really good pro day in bad weather probably helps him out quite a bit.
Are they going to draft a punter, Alex?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I'm obviously mocking it, but it wouldn't. But actually, I think didn't Matthew say that all those specialists they've ever drafted came earlier than the 7th round? I think every specialist they've ever drafted has, at least under the Colbert era, has been 6th round or higher.
And I guess can you include DeMarcus Ayers in that?
Well, no, like actual specialists like kicker, punter, long snapper. Holbo was a 6th round pick. Sepulveda a 4th round pick. Have they ever drafted a punter? Well, besides Sepulveda?
I don't think so. Other than Sepulveda, right?
Drafted a kicker. Never drafted a kicker, have they? Chris Brown was not drafted, I don't think, by the Steelers. Anyway, but 7th round here for Presley Harvin III.
Okay.
With the final pick, I didn't know where to go with the final pick here, so I went with kind of a guy that I like quite a bit. Grant Stewart, the linebacker from Houston, kind of a Medikevich type of guy, going to be a special teams demon, hopefully. Don't really see the upside of him playing ever on defense, but just a hair-on-fire kind of guy, almost blocked 2 punts at the Senior Bowl. And so I think a guy that's going to make your room better and more competitive, and that's a worthwhile 7th round pick. Wherever
that guy ends up, you and I got a chance to talk to him, and in fact, that I think that Houston Pro Day was the last one that we did out of all of them, and it's probably the best one overall. What a great group of kids all together, and I did not know anything about this kid until the day of that thing, and man, if you want someone to root for, it's him. I mean, It is him. Mother, obviously, attached to the streets quite a bit. I think still fighting a drug problem and all like that. And this kid's an underdog in every sense of the imagination. There's no reason for him to even have made it as far as he has made it, really, with all the strikes against him. Going to be a whirlwind of a special teams player. In fact, he'll probably end up with the damn Patriots is where he'll end up. I understand it. And look, I don't think he's all that bad of a linebacker. I mean, not super twitchy athletic, but a little bit more athletic than I think Medikevich was coming out.
Yeah, the hair probably helps with that flowing around like that. But yeah, he's a better athlete than Medikevich. I mean, he's not a great athlete though, and he's pretty undersized. But as a special teams guy, you can do a whole lot worse. So I think that just makes your room better. And so I'll be following wherever he ends up.
That guy is wired a lot differently. Period. And they're one of those bolts. I think I told you one of those bolts aren't tightened down all the way, and I like guys like that.
Yeah.
Definitely a guy you want to root for, and definitely a guy that I think when on the field going to play with his hair on fire.
Yeah, just draft all Houston guys this year. I'd be happy. Peyton Turner and Stevenson and Braylon Jones, Stewart, and I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, the offensive lineman too, right? Or no?
Braylon Jones, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, impressive guy, and maybe a guy to consider on day 3, a versatile center guard prospect. So that's the mock draft. A lot of other guys I wanted to consider here: Kendrick Green and Braylon Jones and Freiermuth, etc. But I think I'm pretty happy with how things turned out.
Right when you push the button, what pick of yours did you, I guess, second get? Look, we'll be lucky to hit one or two of them out of these things, and it's a losing proposition all the way around. But was there, when you pushed the button, was there one that you said, "Oh, I don't know"?
Yeah,
why did I do that?
Just the second round. Could I put Freiermuth at 55 and then Miners at 87 and try to figure out the rest later? I certainly considered that. Had some mock drafts where I tried to map that out, but just kind of settle on this because I think they're going to take some defensive guys a little bit earlier than people think.
Okay, and I think you or Josh might win the award this year for the most liked mock draft finale. I might not even put one out now.
No, you have to. Just go all punters. Really, get the award for least liked.
I mean, I'm gonna lose now.
When is your mock draft coming out?
It's either it's got to be soon, right? Either tomorrow or Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow or Wednesday. I didn't know if you had a singular date.
I don't have a singular date. I've got it started, but
how far are you in? You got the Steelers will draft.
I'll get it out there.
All right. Looking forward to it, Dave. All right. I think kind of the last thing for our show today, we'll get to read emails in a little bit, but we just want to kind of preview the draft, go through things, relatively quickly, but position by position. Today we do the offense. Wednesday we'll do the defense to try to give you just that last second recap and really preview of what to look for, both the draft, broadly in terms of just the players in this class, and then more specifically the Steelers, who they may be interested in and what positions they may or may not be targeting.
Right.
All right, so we can start things off. Let's just go kind of in order here with quarterback. We know very unlikely to take a quarterback in the first round. All those guys are probably going to be gone, especially with Colbert's admission that they don't really have any plans on trading up in the draft. The mid-round guy is possible. I think Jamie Newman from Wake Forest is probably the guy to watch here if you're talking about, fourth-round quarterbacks.
I think if they, and I've said it several times, I think if they go anywhere, probably be in that fourth round. You tend to think Mon might go a lot earlier than that, but
yes, I think he's a second-round guy.
Okay, well, period. I think it's either a guy like Mond or Newman. If they do, I'm not expecting them to go quarterback. I hope they don't go quarterback, but if they do, I envision it being one of those two guys.
Like I threw out a late-round guy to keep an eye on, KJ Costello from Stanford, originally transferred to Mississippi State, had a very mixed 2020 season. They were at his San Jose State Pro Day, so again, I would not draft KJ Costello, but if you want to just throw out one more name, I would at least throw out KJ Costello.
Okay.
All right, running back. Again, we've really talked about this position so much in the pre-draft process. I'm also with quarterback. Will they bring in an undrafted free agent? I guess is a question. Maybe because they need a rookie minicamp kind of guy.
They're going to have to add an arm somehow, some way. I think unless some of these rules have changed that we missed somewhere, about eligibility or along those lines. They're going to have somebody. Even if it's a tryout player or something, they're going to have probably at least two quarterbacks, you would think, at the rookie mini camp. So, if you draft one that obviously lessens the need to have one undrafted there. But once again, I'll be surprised if they go that route, Alex. But I am expecting us to have a new arm to talk about at some point, after the draft is over, even if it is an undrafted free agent, maybe a tryout player.
Right. They could sign a veteran tryout guy too. I think with tryout players, there's no really cap on how old they can be. They can be a fourth-year veteran, I think, and bring them in for a tryout. So maybe they'll go that route instead.
Okay.
All right, two running back. Again, so much discussion about the position. Najee Harris versus Travis Etienne versus Javonte Williams at the top. If it's not one of those three guys, and you're talking about, I think, Drake Sermon, Ramondre Stevenson. But this is I think a good running back class overall. It's not a great historically, good class, but I think it's a good class top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think you hit on the names there. We'll be shocked if they don't come out as draft with a running back. A. And B, I think we'll be shocked if it isn't, say, one of the 5 or 6 names, that you rattled off there. Obviously, if you don't draft one in the first round, the odds of you getting either Travis Etienne or Harris are probably nil at that point. So then would a guy like Javonte Williams possibly fall? Carter, I don't think Carter fits their profile. Michael Carter out of North Carolina. I don't suppose you can entirely rule the rule that out, but I would think and look, I mean, obviously people are going to get into talk about it. No way Javonte Williams falls to the second round. Okay, maybe not. So then at that point, I mean, I think you're down to Trey Sermon in probably the second or the third round, or maybe the fourth if he falls that far. Who knows how far some of these running backs are going to fall after you get past, say, the top two or three of them.
Yeah, if they don't take a running back at 24, I wouldn't be shocked if Sermon was the guy at 55, just to make sure you get your guy. Because in terms of the feature back capable type of players, he might be one of the last ones remaining. And so I would not, discount him as early as 55.
I think they like him.
Yeah, I do too.
I think they like him. So once again, if I think that if it's not Harris, if it's not ETN in round 1, I really like the chances of it being Sermon in round 2 or round 3, or maybe even 4. I mean, who knows how far he fall, but I could envision Sermon being the running back if they didn't get one in first.
Some other backs to talk about. I've been a fan of Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis. There's Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State, who would have been probably a top-ish pick, had he come out this past year. But, stayed in school, probably not the best move for him. Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana. Seagulls watched Kevin Dawson and Robert Hunt last year. They probably watched a good bit of Elijah Mitchell as a, mid-round type of guy.
Okay.
And then late-round guys, Chris Evans from Michigan's a potential receiver. Jared Dokes was someone who did kind of check every single box and what they look for, study. And also, I believe, B.J. Emmons, Florida Atlantic Steelers, I believe, were at his pro day. And so that's the guy to watch. Maybe he's a late-round undrafted type of guy.
Okay.
All right, fullback, just Ben Mason. They're not going to draft Ben Mason. I like Ben Mason, but probably not going to be the guy. Tight end. We've had so much debate about tight end overall and, what the team could do here. I think Pat Freiermuth at 55 is the most likely thing if you had to call a shot on anything. Also, Tommy Tremble, as we've discussed, too, are both big Tommy Tremble fans as well. And then late-round guys could be a Luke Farrell from Ohio State, Sean Bayer from Iowa, guys like that.
Yeah, I think Hunter from Boston College is something that they could live with as well, too. I think the Bates out of BYU is another one.
Boise State, yeah.
I mean, Boise State is another one. And Josh Carney even asked me, I think, last night about Briley Moore out of Kansas State. I think I've just watched the highlights on him only, but that's another guy, 6th, 7th round, I think, that more of a blocker than known for his receiver ability and all like that I think comes into the question. Look, just because we haven't talked about him all that much doesn't mean that it's hard to get to every player that you want to get to throughout this process here. Man, I hope they draft one, Alex. Period. Sure. As you mentioned, Farrell, who you had in your mock draft out of Ohio State, I think is another very, very possible guy. If they do draft one, here's the hoping that he's got some blocking ability, right? I mean. That's why I don't think the Kenny
Yeboah. I was going to mention Yeboah.
He just there's not enough. You already got one on your roster, and it's called Eric Ebron. You already.
Right, but who's going to replace Ebron this time next year?
Yeah, but I want something that helps me down. I'd worry about that next year. I'm wanting one. I want an all around one this year. And
can't you find that guy? Can't you sign Jesse James or a veteran that could be your blocker, veteran tight end, and something like that?
Well, push the button.
I'm just saying you can find a blocking tight end. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean,
there's not a lot. I mean, not a lot of. I'd much rather
not in the draft, but in free agency,
I'm talking. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, I thought they would have went after Luke Wilson late last year, but they didn't. Right.
That's true. Yeah, but Yeboah in the 4th round. I mean, I know neither of us may be super high on the idea, but I think that's something to consider.
All right, and the Bowling Green kid was. Mildly attractive. What was his name?
I like Quentin Morris. I think he's a receiver. He's not going to be much of a blocker, but I think he's a fun, X type of guy, like a really, really poor man's Kyle Pitts.
Right.
And that was at his pro day to Mac guy Dan Colbert there in his Mac territory. So tight end hopefully gets invested, but it could really be anything from like 2nd to 7th round, and we have no idea where tight end is going to end up on the map, if it even ends up on the map at all.
I think the sweet spot is for one of that fourth round pick with Tommy Tremble. If he, I know people keep, here we go, he ain't going to be there. Okay, well, maybe he's not going to be there. But if he is there, Tremble in the 4th round would be kind of sweet all the way around, value and everything, along with it. Because, I think everybody knows about his blocking, but I don't think people give Tommy Tremble enough credit for how he can function in the passing game if you need him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just was not utilized a lot there at Notre Dame. But did Colbert tip his hand at all? You mentioned that earlier about tight end class, the depth not being that great. Could that signal earlier than later for the position?
Especially if it's a blocking one, because that in turn helps the running game, I think. So it's possible he might have tipped it. Was
Tremble your number 2 tight end, or who was your number 2 tight end? Was it Long, Tremble, somebody else?
You know how I've phrased this now. It's kind of Pitts, and then I don't even know if there's a 2 right now.
Well, I'm making you pick a 2.
Because Freiermuth will probably be the guy, but it's out of default, I did not like what I saw on the overall film with him as far as receiving ability down the field.
Yeah, but I watched some more of him this weekend, and he's got really strong hands. He's really tough over the middle. He's not going to be a big dynamic, field stretcher, but he's going to make those tough catches over the middle of the field.
Right, but is that worth? I think they like him. I think they like him a lot. I think they like him enough that they would make him to pick at 55. So, to me, I think it's like one of 4 guys that you're looking at for the Steelers to draft. I think it's Freiermuth. I think it's Tremble. I think it's Hunter out of Boston College, and Yates. What's his name? Yates.
John Bates.
Bates out of Boise State.
Yeah, Bates would have special teams value as well, and that could be a way to impact the game right away as opposed to just playing tight end.
If it's not one of those 4 guys, I'll be surprised. I wish Tommy Tremble would have had about 20 more targets.
I wish he would have had about an inch longer arms.
Right.
We'd all be pretty happy.
He can get it done though, man.
I know.
They've never drafted like Charlie Warner too. I think Charlie Warner was an underrated blocker coming out. And look, he didn't have a lot of production either coming out of Georgia. And those guys get pushed down. If they don't, look at the Kittles. You can't tell me people didn't look at Kittles' film and say, "My God, look at what a blocker he is." However, we just can't overcome the fact that he only had X amount of receptions. Well, you got a lot of tight ends kind of in that same boat,
Mm-hmm. And just X amount of snaps, where Tremble just didn't play a ton, so there isn't as much film to go off of either, which is correlating with the lack of snaps. But we'll see on tight end. Will this be the year that they draft a tight end above the 5th round? Let me ask one more pointed question.
I think so, and I think it's either going to be. I like the odds of Tremble in the 4th or Freiermuth in the 2nd.
All right, good deal. All right, Dave, moving to receiver, and it's a good receiver class overall. Not that the Steelers have an urgent need at the position. We don't expect them to take probably not a day 1 pick and probably not a day 2 pick on the position as well. Who are some maybe later round guys that you kind of like and kind of feel like they could fit as Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, and look, I haven't done a lot of, because of it not being as high a priority of a position or deemed that throughout this offseason here, and especially on the heels of them getting Juju back in the fold and all like that. It's kind of hard to pencil in someone that late overall. Will it be an underclassman? I kind of doubt it. Later on in the draft, I think it'd be a sparky kid. I'm hoping it's one can kind of be a field stretcher, if you will. So I sure hope it's not Schwartz.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think your requirement for receiver is just not Anthony Schwartz. Could it be a Z-type? Trevon Grimes and Austin Watkins, Des Fitzpatrick, someone like that, maybe more of a slot type. Marquez Stevenson will look good. Amari Rogers is probably going to be a day 2 guy, so that's probably not going to be in consideration for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cornell Powell from Clemson, pretty impressive height, weight, speed kind of guy. But And then your guy, Dax, is it Dax Malign? Is how you say his name?
Milne, ain't it? Yeah. But I think there's really an outside chance. Because it is. What do you think about the depth? I mean, it's a good day. It's not really star top heavy, right? But there's a lot of usable guys throughout this draft, I think. Even the guy that Tyler wrote and talked quite a bit about. Who was that?
Terry, Florida State.
No, the Houston. Was it the Houston?
Stevenson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a guy potentially late that you look at. Cornell Powell could be a sneaky kind of mid-round guy for the Steelers, I think.
Yeah, they love those Clemson receivers.
And I'm trying to think, what else did I have here? I have Imar Smith-Marset out of Iowa, another East-West Shrine Game kid.
He checked every box in our look for study.
Right. Boy, there's just Marquez Stevenson. I just mentioned him. And then who is the guy you guys kept raving about out of the small school kid?
Any more detailed stats than that?
I'm trying to think who it was.
Darden, North Texas.
I'm drawing a blank here on the name. No, maybe it's Tamarion Terry you guys were talking about out of Florida State.
Yeah, all the guys seem really high on him. I think it was Josh and Tyler specifically who were really high on Terry. About Seth Williams from Auburn. Ike Hilliard, we know he was at Auburn's Pro Day to watch Schwartz, and also Seth Williams as well.
That's a possibility. The thing with Terry, I wanted to get a good look at about 30 or 40 down-the-field targets on him, but I haven't gotten to that yet.
I heard there's off-the-field concerns with Terry. I know Josh has alluded to that. I don't know what those are, but Steelers typically stay away from any sort of character red flags.
Yeah, especially in the earlier rounds. But I mean, if you have a guy that can stretch the field, and I mean, Martavis Bryant didn't necessarily come into the league clean, right?
Yeah, that's true. But I don't even know the nature of Terry's off the field stuff. I should have asked Josh about it. But yeah, receiver, if it happens, probably day 3. It's kind of my expectation of things right now. I
would think there's a strong possibility if they did go wide receiver that it's somebody once again that A, did not opt out, B, maybe an all-star invite, and obviously going to have some level of sparkiness to him.
And like production as well. All right, Dave, offensive line. We'll start with offensive tackle. It is a really deep tackle class overall. And again, tackle could be, I think, anything first to probably 4th round. I don't think they get out of the 4th round without taking a tackle there, but it really could be anything from Tevin Jenkins to Leatherwood to Mayfield in round 2 to Spencer Brown. Or Dylan Radins, et cetera. James Hudson, Tommy Doyle is shown in my mock. Adrian Ely from Oklahoma was someone I considered in my mock draft as well. So a lot of directions this one could go.
Eichenberg possibly. Liam out of Notre Dame. Stone Forsythe, I think, is a name that you saw throughout this process. You turn around and he's a guy that looks 6'8", right? 307 pounds. Has the athletic profile kind of that the Steelers will look for. They're not great explosion numbers, I don't think. When you look at the vertical and the broad jump there, but. I think Forsythe has to be in the equation here overall. You could go down a list, and this is a very deep tackle class.
Yeah, a lot of impressive talent. There's someone even like Walker Little, who was an opt-out guy, so maybe not a candidate for the Steelers, but he's a first-round talent that may get drafted in the 2nd, 3rd round.
Right. I'll be surprised if they don't come out of this draft with a tackle. There was a little bit of buzz. Did we talk a little bit about Jaylen Moore, another Western Michigan kid, throughout this process? I think he's a little bit undersized. I think there's some wonder maybe if he'll even have to kick inside to guard. But it really is hard to imagine the Steelers coming out of this draft and really out of the first 4 rounds without a tackle.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, Moore replaced the core 4 at left tackle in college, so that'd be pretty poetic if he was drafted to potentially be a core 4's replacement in the NFL. As well, and James Hudson from Cincinnati did not test well, but I think he's a really, really good athlete and a pretty, a much better player on tape than the way he tested.
Right.
All right, interior offensive lineman with centers and guards. Center obviously has been on the Steelers' radar for quite some time. We've discussed a lot of those top guys: Creed Humphrey, Landon Dickerson, Quinn Miners, as we just discussed in my mock draft. Obviously, they're going to draft a center, or at least someone that's going to get converted to play center. Again, it's a question of when. I think it'll come sooner than later, though.
Yeah, I think it's going to come sooner rather than later as well, too. And going to be interesting. Obviously, the name we talked about earlier in the show, Landon Dickerson. What's going to happen with the medicals there? You know, it all. If the medicals fly with the Steelers, why wouldn't you take them at 24?
Yeah, there's really nothing stopping you.
I mean either you're good with if you're good enough with the medicals to take them in the second round, wouldn't you take them in the first round?
That makes sense. Yeah.
I'm just trying to give a reason why you wouldn't take him at 24 if you would take him at 55.
Yeah, I guess it would just be the whole face of the draft kind of thing, where there's more risk in the first round, more money, more pedigree attached to it. But you're right. Either you're comfortable with the medicals or you're not. Like, either you're going to draft him in the first round or you're going to wait till the fifth round. It's not really, okay, we'll take him at the first, but or not take him in the first. But
he's either on your board or he's off it, right?
Right. Basically, yeah. Now,
I guess you could have a situation where, okay, well, we're taking him off our board, but there he is in the fifth round, you know. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, I think because us not knowing what's going on with the medicals, I suppose it's plausible. I think it's highly doubtful, though, that Dickerson makes it out of the second round, right?
It's unpredictable. You know, Biadasz, as you always point out, dropped last year, and no one saw that coming. But
and you talk about the Baylor defensive tackle we both liked years ago, you know?
Right. And he fell to the fourth. I think Billings went in the fourth.
Yeah.
So I think Dickerson is gonna go, but in the top two rounds. But I can't guarantee it because the medical is scary, and the reports have been that there are a lot of teams understandably concerned by the medical history.
My theory on this is if he clears to make it on your board, what makes it where you like him? Let's face it, they like this kid.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
Clem is pounding the table to get this guy.
Have you seen all? I mean, I have went back these last 2 weeks and watched a lot of not only tape on him, but done a lot of reading on him, on his character, and all these videos on him. And when you watch and read all this stuff, you think to yourself, how in the hell can they not like this kid? You know?
Yeah, wasn't he setting up a gym last year
during
COVID, you know, in his house or something, and just brought in equipment and did, had protein shakes and just stuff that the coaches just love, absolutely love.
And then I forget which show it was that focused on right after he went down with that knee injury against Florida, of how the entire team reacted to him being carted off, you know?
I didn't see that.
Just amazing. I don't think there was, that's what he meant to that team. You know?
Remember, he was a transfer too. It's not like he was a 4-year guy at Bama. He transferred from Florida State and became a captain and well respected by that team immediately, which is so tough to do in that very, not insular, but just, already there existing culture in Alabama.
So once again, when you get after the fact, how sometimes we get after the fact with some of these draft picks and we go, oh yeah, the Steelers loved him.
Right.
Sure. It's easy to do after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
We say
it's easy to draft after the picks are already
exactly. But we've done that. I know I've done that. You've done that too, sure. Right? Where you say, "Oh, sure. I get it now."
McFarland last year made a lot more sense after the fact. Yeah.
Right. Landon Dickerson is that guy for the Steelers.
Right, but we're talking about him now, and we know they love him. It's just, do the doctors love him? Will the doctors allow the Steelers to love Landon Dickerson is the question.
And that's what it boils down to. Other centers, actually, Miners you hit on has got to be in the conversation here. Myers out of Ohio State's got to be in the discussion here. If you miss out on everybody and you get into round 4. Or 5 or so, or they don't have fifth round picks, so it'd have to be in round 4 more than likely. You could do worse than a Robert Hainsey and convert him to center.
Yeah, in terms not including the guys who may convert, I think you have to get one of these 4 centers: Humphrey, Dickerson, Miners, or Myers. After that, there's a pretty steep drop off in my eyes in terms of the center class. There are still guys I like Trey Hill and Braylon Jones and Drew Dalman from Stanford, Kendrick Green from Illinois, probably a guy to watch. We should talk about it a little bit more, but I think you really want to come away with one of those top 4 centers.
All right, well, let's circle that back up to the top of the podcast here. And Kevin Colbert, I think there's a little bit of liars. I think there's a little bit of lying going on there. Because I think there's the basically the 4 or 5 that you mentioned, and as far as being able to come in and being year 1 starters and maybe hanging your hat on it, I'm not seeing it past the ones that you mentioned. Dickerson, Myers, and Humphrey.
Or did you mention Humphrey? Yeah. But you can still get those guys maybe in the second round, which maybe you can't always get every single season, every single draft class. And there's also conversion guys as well, so that's also worth mentioning.
And then Hainsey, I think you add to the list. The more I get into the Trey Hill tape, I don't know where you're on Trey Hill. I mean, I like him. I could see him, but later in the draft, right? 4th round.
Yeah, day 3 guy.
All right.
His knees are a concern, 330 pounds with some knee issues. And then Kendrick Green. Someone had told me, I need to check this again. I may have been wrong about this. It might have actually been Adrian Clem at Illinois Pro Day working out Kendrick Green, the guard center, a good athlete with some power and some stoutness. So that's someone to think about maybe in the 4th, even the 3rd, but I would say 4th round.
Yeah, but is he really 6'1", 7'8"?
Yeah, he's short, but I mean, he's got leverage. That's what he'll say.
Yeah, low man wins, right? He's got that. Anybody beyond that? I mean, could you see them coming out of the? I'll give you these 5 names again: Dickerson, Myers, Humphrey, Hainsey. True or false? The Steelers will draft one of those 5 guys.
True.
I'm going true as well too. I'm not buying this. It's deep. We can wait. I'm not buying now. Here's the thing, and we've said this before in the past. Center tends to get pushed down a little bit for whatever reason in these drafts. I mean, you go back to last year and Biadez and a few others, getting pushed down, and they were some decent quality centers in that class, right?
Yeah. Generally, the way I kind of feel like center goes is it doesn't go early, but once the run starts, early day 2, it goes pretty quick. You get 3-4 guys come off the board within like 20 picks. So I think that's where the second round becomes your sweet spot for Pittsburgh.
All right.
A couple late round guys to consider as well. Braylon Jones from Houston we mentioned, and also Brandon Kennedy from Tennessee, a guy that confirmed he had spoken with the team.
Jack Anderson, another guy, right, that can convert.
He was exclusively a right guard at Texas Tech, but he's been working at center in the pre-snap process. So that's another guy, kind of your classic tough guy.
And he's 7th round or undrafted probably.
Yeah, late day 3. Once you get late in day 3, boards are going to be so all over the map, and with the shallowness of this class and just the craziness and uncertainty of the draft situation, I mean, it's going to be totally throw everything out the window. But late day 3 kind of guy. I mean,
any way they draft a guard whatsoever, a true guard in this draft, I would say no. I mean, I think the closest thing that you would get to it might be Hainsey, because he can shift and play guard and really play all 5 spots for you. So outside of that, I mean, are you expecting, any true guards?
Yeah, if I go down the list here of true guards, Wyatt Davis, Trey Smith, Ben Cleveland, Deontay Brown, Aaron Banks. I mean, there's some guys I like there, but hard to see them as the pick unless they have some center versatility like a Kendrick Green.
There's going to be opportunities on the board in this draft where there might be a guard that's graded considerably higher than another position, I think, for the Steelers. And then that should blow away from Kevin Colbert's best player available theory,
Yeah, we know they've gone up.
Sure.
They've not followed their board. Before they took Jason Rolls over Sean Lee. And who was the other one? What was the other example of them not following their board?
I mean, Artie Burns, Edmonds. I mean, you could go down the list.
Well, but at like a moment where we knew the story was that like they had a player rated higher on the board, and they took someone else that was lower on their board. Like Worlds was one of those examples. There was another one, I think, that I'm just missing right now. Anyway, but yeah, point taken.
All right.
It's not straight BPA. That's just not.
We'll be shocked if there's a true guard taken, right?
Yeah, basically, unless it's a 7th round flyer, get some depth there. But you had Haig who can play guard, Coward who can play guard. You got Finney who can play guard if you draft a center. So probably not a big need there.
All
right. Anything else with the offense you want to discuss? Any names we haven't talked about? Any position that you feel like last mention here?
All right, we're just doing offense today, right?
Yeah, just offense. We'll tackle defense on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think we went through a lot now. I think there are going to be several of those names. And how many total players do you think we just talked about? 100?
And the whole show? I don't know, 70, 75.
A good bet that 3 or 4 of the draft picks come out of that.
I hope so.
They better us.
We're jobs.
Yep. I enjoy it. I definitely enjoyed it. And I really think as far as offensive players go, out of the first 3 picks, at least 2 of them should be offensive players.
Yeah, I think so as well. That was when I went first and second round of my mock draft offense. So yeah, that makes sense.
All right, true or false? And you'd have to answer false on this because if he was outside your top first 4 picks, because good bit of the time, well, about 50% of the time, I think when the Steelers do draft a Big Ten player, that player normally comes in the first 4 rounds. Now, do you think this team will draft a Big Ten player? Obviously your mock draft doesn't match that, but what do you like the odds of a Big Ten player being one of the team's first 4 picks in this year's draft?
I mean, it's hard for me to really, quantify that. I mean, it's certainly possible just given where they've been. They've been to Ohio State and Notre Dame and all the talent coming out of those schools. So, yeah, there's a decent chance, but I couldn't tell you. There's a 62 versus 51 versus 11% chance of it.
All right, what do we miss, Alex?
Hopefully that's everything. Hopefully we didn't miss too much. Just kind of scrolling through the website here. Also, by the way, we're going to probably mention this again, but for readers to the site, you probably have noticed today there was a newsletter that's popping up. I know there's been a lot of guys already subscribing to that. You can get instant alerts, a daily newsletter, or a weekly newsletter, which drops on Sunday morning. Or Sunday evening, actually. We switched it to Sunday evening. So hopefully you guys are enjoying that. And any feedback on those newsletters would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. And we also have to give a shout out to one of our new sponsors right now ahead of the 2021 NFL draft. And that's Ian from Bosley MD doing some testing on the Terrible Podcast right now, especially when it comes to, we hope to pick him up as a long-time advertiser as well, too. Bosley MD is the thinning hair authority and the leader in effective thinning hair solutions for both men and women, offering clinically proven hair regrowth treatments and effective everyday hair care essentials designed to help prevent hair loss and combat thinning. Go to Bosley MD, that's BOSLEYMD.com, and just go look at all the products. You probably will be shocked to see all the products. If you don't do anything else, go to BosleyMD.com and look at all the hair care products. They sent me a big care package. I think Alex too. And boy, I didn't realize they had all those kind of products for hair growth and all like that. Go to BosleyMD.com, look at all the products, and if you decide to purchase, use discount code HAIR50, all one word, HAIR50, to get 50% off all products. That's the special that Ian, he's a Steelers fan, longtime follower of mine on Twitter, and longtime listener of the Terrible Podcast as well too. So if you got some hair, looking for some hair thinning solutions there, looking for some products, clinically proven hair regrowth treatments and all like that, make sure you go to BosleyMD.com and use HAIR50 and the discount code to get an amazing deal from them.
Absolutely, and shout out to Ian for partnering with the Terrible Podcast. All right, Dave, let's get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
Okay, to the email box, let's start with Keaton Prince. Writes, best Steelers content around. Thank you for that. He says, huge follower from Northwest Ohio, middle of mouth breather country, a.k.a. Browns fans. 33 years old, lifelong Steelers fans. Got my Slash jersey. Just want to say I love the site and podcast, priceless knowledge and content y'all put out. Best place to get all the Steelers content. Let's see. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, and Alex, for all you do. Y'all rock. As for the draft specials, y'all did damn. I wish it was longer. Y'all grind hard, and you can tell with the finished product. Loved Alex's mock draft he did online, and the round table y'all had just primo content. Can't get anywhere else. Okay, there's no question here. He says, Y'all are killing the draft season and love all that you do. So thank you very much. Well, thank you, Keaton, for that email and all the kudos that you gave us there. Let's see. Christopher Byham writes, Dave, if we draft our starting running back this week and Eric Ebron is still our tight end, I'm a little concerned about blocking and 11 personnel. Blitz pickup is a big deal. Relying on a rookie and Ebron to keep Ben upright gives me pause, especially if they want to push the ball down the field. How do you think this will be handled? I realize it may have to play out during minicamp, but it makes one missed assignment to get to our franchise quarterback killed. Are we looking at Benny Snell football until our rookie is up to speed? Thanks as always. The love and dedication you have for the Steelers shows on the website, the podcast. The Depot is my go-to. Much love, he says from Chris. Chris, I'll tell you this: if you draft a running back, especially in the first round or second round, you're going to get that player on the field right away. And that's why I've said all along, and I think Alex agrees with me, you better get one that can do it all that you have. And we know Mike Tomlin likes those bell cow backs anyway there. So if you're drafting a running back in the first or second round this year, you're doing so to have him on the field at week 1 if he's healthy enough and to play a large amount of snaps. So that means he better be okay in pass protection and all. And as far as Ebron goes, man, hopefully we're going to have a blocking tight end to some degree to talk about there because, yeah, I'm not 11 personnel and have Ebron out there and a lot of 11 personnel. That doesn't give you a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings. Now they did bring in Joe Haig, tackle / really tight end really is what he is. Not a lot of us are looking forward to seeing Joe Haig play a lot of tackle snaps this year. I don't think, barring injury happening, knock on wood, but. As far as Benny Snell, I mean, Mike Tomlin has praised the you-know-what out of Benny Snell the last couple of years, but that's never materialized into anything to this point. And obviously last year they gave James Conner every opportunity to be the bell cow on top of that. So, we think they're going to draft a running back early in this draft, and if they do, I expect that running back to be on the field right away.
I do too. And in terms of how do you mitigate maybe some pass blocking issues with Ebron and with this rookie running back, I think the best way to do that is make defenses cover them. Put those guys out there in assignment so that they can't blitz the linebacker or they can't, blitz the DB as often. Or if they do, you throw hot and then you hit, open Ebron or Najee Harris or Etienne, whoever the running back is. So that's probably the best way to go about it is don't make those guys be blockers. Let those guys be receivers and force the defense to cover.
All right, Chris Warren writes in, gentlemen, is it possible that we are under-assessing the need to draft a tackle that can potentially start out of the gate? He says, I love Zach Banner, but not only is he recovering from a serious injury, he has never played significant snaps. What if he doesn't pan out? Okorafor wasn't horrible in pass pro last year, but what happens if Ben holds onto the ball longer and throws down the field more, which in my opinion is essential? Aren't center and tackle the two biggest areas of concerns?
Well, they gave Banner that money, so they're going to play him to start at least and kind of go from there. And, yeah, I get on Okorafor, but I think at least they have two guys that they feel like can be starters, and they paid Banner that money for him to start. So I think they're going to take a tackle probably within the top 4 rounds. It could even still be at 24. That's not out of the question, but I do think they're more comfortable at tackle than they are at center right now.
I agree. If you look at, and Alex and I talked about the biggest holes on this roster right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball, as we sit here right now today, the biggest holes on this roster seem to be center, running back, and tight end, right?
Yeah, I think tackle is important to address, especially in a good tackle class like this. But in terms of what do you need now, it's probably those positions.
Austin Hackett writes in, hey guys, Austin out of Denver, Colorado. Happy draft week, and thanks so much for the Depot team for all the fantastic content the last couple months. Thank you for that, Austin. He says, my question is, do you guys think this year is as likely the team trades back out of the first round pick as any in the Colbert era? Understanding it takes 2 to tango and not giving anybody really want to move into the Steelers slot, but do you think Colbert and Tomlin will be much more inclined to try this year and maybe even take an offer less than what they normally be open to. You think Kevin Colbert going to take less than? To me, this draft feels a lot like 2019 when really felt there was a good chance they might try to trade up for Devin. But look, I didn't think they were going to go. If you're looking back at 2019, if you can remember back to 2019 thinking there was a good chance that they were going to move up as far as they moved up to get Devin Bush, God bless you. He says, I know you two talked about the possibility of that trade leading. I mean, we talked about, I don't know if we talked about moving up that far, though, did we? About Devin Bush?
Yeah, it was a chance, but it just, the Steelers' history of that is just not strong, so you really didn't know how good of a chance it was going to be. And the Steelers probably didn't know either until you just start discussing it and putting the trade together.
I mean, look, we'll from here until the end of time, we'll talk about we'll entertain the possibility of maybe moving up or down. It's so damn hard to predict. And and Austin, we talked at the top of the show there about what Kevin Colbert had to say. If he were to trade up at this point, saying what he said just a few hours ago, it really would be surprising, especially in the first couple of rounds there. As far as trading back, Alex and I covered that as well, too. I mean, are you really going to go down more than 5 spots? I mean, how many spots would it take you to get out of the first round completely? 8? 7?
The 8 or 24, so go to 32 would be 8 spots. What did Colbert say in that Devin Bush year 2019 about trading? Did he ever tip his hand at all in terms of what he might have said?
I don't know. I had to go back and look at that. It seems like it's the same thing.
I mean, it probably is. I'm just curious. Let me try. I think I found an article that might hit on it, but just vamp here for a second.
Yeah, I just he's Austin talking about trading back out of the first round. Austin, like we said, top of the show, if they go down, it'll be to go down just a couple of spots, 3 or 4 spots, maybe at most. I will be stunned beyond stunned if they trade out of the first round completely.
Yeah, and I'm not expecting them to go up. Yeah, back in 2019, Colbert was just giving standard. We could go up, we could go down. Now, we'll see what happens.
It might rain, it might not.
Yeah, so not a whole lot there.
All right, Jason P. writes in, great draft podcast as usual. Would love to see you guys pull up a mock draft machine live and run it through a few different scenarios, some over under for the draft in season. 5 plus 5 quarterbacks go in the you're going to take the over under 5.5 quarterbacks in the first round.
Well, 5 are going. The question is, does a Davis Mills or Kellen Mond slip in? I don't believe ultimately they will, so I'll take the under.
I'll take the under as well too. 5.5 tackles over under in the first round.
Top of my head here, I don't have all the names, but I'll go over.
I'll go under. I'll go right at 5.
Right at 5.
1.5 running backs in the first round. Over under.
Good question. I'm going to take the under and say just 1, and I guess that one's going to be Najee Harris to Pittsburgh.
I think only 1 goes as well too in the first round. 25 Roethlisberger touchdown passes. Over under.
I hope it's over. I mean, they're going to throw the ball a little bit less, but hopefully not that much less. I'll take the over.
Yeah, if he stays healthy, even you would think 25. He should be able to hit 25. So I'll take the over. 3,092 Roethlisberger passing yards. What's that a game?
Yeah, that's a lot of
17 games, right?
Yeah, it's going to be right around there.
Even if you said for somehow he only played 16 games, that's 193.
He say 3,900 or 3,092?
No, he said 3,092. That's 193.25 a game. Give me the over.
I thought he said 3,900 something. Yeah, I'll take the over as well.
The better number would be 3,900, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Right. Yeah, exactly.
For what it's worth, the over in both get Ben past Rivers and in. Oh, I see. He says the over. I know why he did this now. 25 and 3,092. For what it's worth, the over in both get Ben past Rivers and into 5th in both categories all time. Cleverly done, Jason P.
You fooled us. We're easy to fool.
Yeah, we would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you stinking meddling kids.
And that dog.
Yeah, and your dog. Did you watch much Scooby-Doo growing up?
A little. I was never big into it, but I think I was just out of that generation that kind of missed the boat on peak Scooby-Doo.
Okay. It used to be the only time we could get cartoons was Saturday morning. Wake up at the crack of dawn, get the old man out of bed. He was really pleased about that.
Uphill both ways through the snow is kind of the vibes I'm getting here.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey, guys, it's Bryce. Love your draft coverage and can't wait until Thursday with the 24th pick. I'm calling my shot that the Steelers will end up taking one of the following 5 players. J.O.K., obviously the inside linebacker out of Notre Dame, Najee Harris, Zaven Collins, Caleb Farley, Creed Humphrey. I think he's painted himself into a corner there, Alex.
It's a lot of names that make sense, but not a lot of the names that make sense in the sense of, teams that are checking the boxes in the history of things. A lot of guys I like there, Humphrey and JOK, but maybe not. Well, JOK, there's a lot of smoke, but Humphrey, I wish you had heard more about Creed Humphrey. How would he not be considered the pick at 24 is what I would love to know. Why is he not in maybe?
Well, I mean, I think you give it a level of plausibility, but
sure.
but obviously with that being at that pro day.
Right, but why weren't they? Like, what is the knock on Humphrey? I would love to ask Colbert that, and if I could give him some true serum, like, why are we not at his pro day?
We'll have to wait till after he's after he retires and then does his book tour. We have him on a terrible podcast. That's probably the only way. Write that one down to ask it about 9 years from now. But yeah, I mean, you're right? I mean, why of all those? Well, I mean, you can make an argument for Zaven Collins too. Why not Zaven Collins?
It's been more smoke on Zaven Collins. I know he doesn't check all those boxes, but the one Cowboys guy seems to think the Steelers are focusing on Zaven Collins.
I mean, Bryce seems pretty confident here, and quite honestly, looking at his list, I think it's Najee Harris or bust for him.
Yeah, but the draft does surprise, so
sure does.
I guess we'll find out on Thursday.
He says no tackle or tight end in the first round, but here's what I see happening. The Steelers take Creed Humphrey. He ends up starting in 2021 with Dawson to his left and DeCastro to his right. Then in 2022, Humphrey is at center. What?
Was Humphrey not at center before?
Oh, he says, no, he says, see it happening. Take Creed Humphrey. He ends up starting in 2021 with Dawson to his left and DeCastro to his right. Then in 2022, Humphrey is at center. Finney then slides to left guard. Finney's not going to be on this roster. If Finney has to be on this roster in 2022, something's gone horribly wrong. And I love me some BJ Finney at left guard, but something has gone wrong, I think. He says Finney then slides to left guard. And then Dawson will kick to right guard, his more natural position when DeCastro is done, and that's your interior for 3 years until Finney is done. Would love to get your thoughts. Our thoughts are that Finney probably not going to be on this roster past 2021, and if he is, it's going to be in a backup role.
Yeah, Finney's not starting next season.
I mean, and once again, I banged the table for a little while for Finney, and especially when it comes to occasional start there at left guard, but it ends right there. And that's why, I mean, there's no way this team can go into the season with BJ Finney as their starting center, right? None. If they do
this season,
yeah,
it's not going to make your run game a whole lot better. It's not going to make your run game better, flat out.
I mean, I'd much rather have him if you wanted him to go into the season. I'd much rather have him at left guard, but now that's not going to happen.
I'd rather have him on the bench.
Right. So, I mean, this team needs a center bad.
Yep.
As we stand right now. Anyway, LM writes in, do you think we should be talking Zaven Collins more? I think the need at inside linebacker for future starter is bigger than edge, but the needed edge is bigger for depth. If they take Collins, they kill two birds with one stone. Future starter inside linebacker, but slides to edge of an injury, then pound combo of offensive line, tight end, cornerback, and running back in rounds 2 through 4. Look, I get that some of you are probably reading a lot of this about Zaven Collins on the edge. He's not an edge, all right? I mean, he's not an edge. He is about as much of an edge as Lawrence Timmons was an edge. And Lawrence Timmons was a lot more of an edge coming out of Florida State than Collins is. We quickly found where Lawrence Timmons' primary position was. And then if you go back to that brief period when James Harrison had to miss some time with that orbital injury and Timmons had to play some outside linebacker, That's not. Collins is not an edge. All right. If you got into a game, you were down several players and you had to move them out there, okay. But let's not talk about Collins anything more than being an off-the-ball linebacker, which is what he is. Now, as far as the talk about should we be talking more about him, Alex and I have talked a lot about Zaven Collins. I even think right out of the chute with some of these early mock drafts here. The thing is in good faith, we can't mock Zaven Collins to the Steelers in round 1 because he's not a Power 5 kid, because Colbert and Tomlin weren't at his pro day. Now, does that mean that the Steelers have these wild set of rules that says, sorry guys, can't draft them? No, but we have to try to insert ourselves into their heads about trends and all like that, and it makes the most sense for us at this point with the pre-draft process over to make the best educated guess that Zaven Collins is not going to be in a group of 4 or 5 players that the Steelers might draft in round 1. Is it impossible? No. I mean, we've talked about this kid being a Planet Theory kid and all like that. I mean, that's great and fine. It's not that we should be talking about him more, because I think we have talked about him the right amount. It's just in good faith when talking about what we deem as being in serious consideration to be the pick at 24, because of all the Blues Clues that we follow, we can't put Collins in there. At least I can't.
Yeah, I can't either. Again, is it possible? Sure, but the history just says that it's not going to go that way. And again, it's not. The history isn't just. There's a correlation there, because they want to get Power 5 guys because they want guys that they evaluated against top competition they feel like can make the jump to the NFL, and then B, with the pro day, they want to see these guys in person so they really can put a face to the guy they're drafting as their face of the draft class. So it's not – because some of the trends don't make sense, like, they haven't drafted an Alabama player in the first round since this, or they didn't draft a cornerback and they drafted Artie Burns, stuff like that. There isn't a real direct correlation between those. It's an interesting tidbit, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. But with these ones, Power 5 and pro day attendance or lack thereof, I think actually has a lot of weight in terms of where their head is at with the draft decisions.
Right.
So, but I think you're right about the edge thing too. He can play a little bit of edge the way Timmons could, but he's an off-ball linebacker.
All right, let's see if we can get one more in here before we close out, and it is from Jason Higgins. Although I totally understand your stance on the running back position and taking one in the first round, I will pose this question to you. If I told you that a running back was – here we go with the game changer question. I told you that a running back was a game changer for your offense and yield 2 or 3 Pro Bowl selections and at least 1 Super Bowl title, would that change your stance on taking the player that could end up on the quote unquote on the pile in 5 years? My personal feelings this year is 2 or 3 top backs and then a significant drop off after that. Well, when is that? When hasn't that been the case? The Steelers have tried the mid-round backs for several years now, and that has yielded no real results. The linemen in this draft seem to be a little bit deeper. I'm totally on board with you. If you take a running back, he better be able to do it all. I think Harris is that guy. If he's there at 24, I'm running to the podium. Then I'm looking for a center in the second and a tight end in the third. Anyway, that's my terrible take. You guys are great. And the pre-draft episode with all the guys was my favorite to date. Thank you for that, Jason. Look, Alex mocked Najee Harris to the Steelers at 24. I think Najee Harris is going to be one of 3 players that the Steelers strongly consider at 24. I think another one of those is a running back as well, too. Doesn't mean I think it's the right decision, but, I mean, all the fingerprints have been all over running backs, and if you take everything that's been said during the offseason, I think it's offensive lineman or I think it's running back, period.
Yeah, in terms of the question, if you could guarantee it, I mean, that's all well and good, but you can't actually guarantee it. So, I mean, you could play that game for any position. What if Creed Humphrey was a 10-year center or Dickerson was healthy and never had another injury? I mean, I get that. And yes, to answer the question, if you could theoretically, guarantee that this guy would be a great, stud running back, then yeah, you'd probably take him. But in reality, it's worthless because it doesn't actually really exist. You know what? If Najee Harris is the pick at 24, there are going to be a lot of happy Steelers fans. You know what? Yep. If Najee Harris is the pick at 24,
there's going to be a lot of unhappy Steelers fans.
You had me for a second there. You fooled me too. I'm easy to fool. I didn't know you were going with that one. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, we see this every year. Half the people are going to love the pick, half the people are going to hate it.
Sure, we'll have the Warren Sharp article on why this was the worst pick in the draft. They take running back at 24,
right.
et cetera.
Right. Half the people are going to say, I told you it was going to be the pick. I told you it was going to be the pick since February 2020. Our job is to try to read the tea leaves as best as we can, make suggestions. Obviously, we do these when I do my mock drafts. I know when Alex and I know really all the guys, I think in general, at this point, we don't mock who we think the Steelers should take, because that you want to make a mock draft even more useless than it already is. Mock who you think they should take. The mocks are bad enough and useless mocking them the way you think the Steelers might draft. And I know that's the way I try to set up my mock drafts, is what I think the Steelers will do. And even then, you're lucky if you hit one or two picks.
Right. I do the same.
But yeah, I get it, Jason. I mean, the thing is, you just can't flip the switch and say, and look at the Magic 8 Ball and say, is this game changing back? I mean, look, Saquon Barkley is about as, I don't know, what would as close to not miss as possible, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is he going to finish out his rookie career with the Giants?
His rookie's contract?
Yeah.
Probably does. But, yeah, the question, was he the right pick? I do think there's a difference between, when we're talking about a top 10 back, taking a running back in the top 10 versus later first round. I think that dynamic changes, because it's not like, they're missing out on a blue chip prospect at 24. I think it's a different conversation when you're talking about a Barkley at, what do you go, 3 or 2 or 3, and Trent Richardson top 5 versus Najee Harris at 24, I think changes the value conversation.
I mean, you're going to get zero shock from me or Alex or probably any of our guys, anybody on Steelers Depot, and really half of Steeler Nation. No shock whatsoever if Najee Harris is the pick at 24.
I mean, no one should be shocked by it. Half of them might not like it, but
you might not like it, but nobody's going to be surprised by it.
Just woke up, Thursday night for the first time in 6 months.
Right. Now, then it gets all into the talk of whether or not you think they should. You get into if you're the analytics, if you're a fungible guy like I am, and all like that. I love the kid just the same. Root for him and hope he becomes a huge exception to the rule. But it doesn't mean that I can't think that it might possibly be the wrong decision if they go that route.
Mm-hmm.
And really same for Ali. I don't know, how do you really feel deep down inside about the running back position? Have you, and this year's class specifically?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not crazy about the idea of taking running back at 24, but I don't want to overcorrect either and be like, this is, Warren Sharp, a terrible idea, such a grave mistake. I mean, it's not that serious. I mean, you need to have a running back, and this team wants a feature back, and it's a component of building your run game. You have to do other parts to improve your run game as well, and I believe in building teams inside out, but I'm not like, this is such a terrible decision. Let's evaluate what if he's the guy or ETN or whoever. I'm going to evaluate the player as opposed to griping about value for the next 3 months.
All right, how far are we into this podcast now?
Over 2 hours.
Are we really? I better end it up then. All right, with that, follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back on Wednesday, probably reviewing my mock draft, talking about defensive players in the draft or whatever else we can mop up on that show as well, too. Obviously, we'll going to be doing a show on Friday, the day after the Steelers make their first round pick, or assuming they make their first round pick. Probably going to do one Saturday, just a brief one, 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then get back after it next week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as well, too. So a lot of versions, a lot of episodes of the Terrible Podcast coming up as well, too. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. For $25 for one calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of the site. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.